Chapter 45-19. Senior Ghost Child, do you know Zhuowen? Xing Hangshu came to the ghost child's side and asked in a low voice. The Ice Ghost King, who was originally indifferent, immediately narrowed his eyes and emitted a cold aura. Nephew Xing, why did you suddenly mention this person? The ghost child said indifferently. Xing Hangshu saw the change in the ghost child's expression and felt a little puzzled. Although he didn't know what grudges Zhuowen and Sakyamuni had, he knew that Sakyamuni didn't like Zhuowen. This was also the reason why he targeted Zhuowen from the beginning. However, from the ghost child's expression, he felt that this Zhuowen should be extraordinary. Even the ghost child seemed to value Zhuowen. Because I met this kid in the extraterritorial battlefield. If junior brother Shirtian didn't mention this kid to me, I might not have recognized him. Xing Hangshu smiled. The ghost child said indifferently, he's in the extraterritorial battlefield? Where? Xing Hangshu smiled slightly and said, it's in the primordial auction house, VIP booth number 3. The ghost child slowly narrowed his eyes, and a strong chill spread from the depths of his eyes. He had naturally heard of this kid, Zhuowen. When Sakyamuni was still in the lower realm, this kid was the latter's old enemy and had defeated Sakyamuni. Originally, they didn't care about this kid. So what if he had defeated Sakyamuni? Sakyamuni's Tao root was too special. It could continuously evolve, and he was destined to become one of the strongest experts in the outer realm. And this old enemy from back then would only become an insignificant ant. The ghost child and the other 2 kings of the other ghost clans noticed Zhuowen. They only knew about Zhuowen through the outer realm heavenly ranking. When they found out that Zhuowen was ranked first on the outer realm celestial leaderboard, they wanted to kill him and contacted Sakyamuni about it. However, Sakyamuni was too arrogant and did not place Zhuowen in his eyes at all. He even told them not to look for Zhuowen. At that time, although they felt that Zhuowen's talent was not bad, they did not take it to heart. After all, this child was just a shadow and did not pose any danger to them. Most importantly, they had blind faith in Sakyamuni. Since Sakyamuni didn't care about Zhuowen, they naturally didn't take it to heart. But now, since the ghost child knew that Zhuowen was in the ancient auction house, he couldn't just ignore it. Zhuowen, if you hadn't met me, perhaps I wouldn't have bothered to look for you. Since you've delivered yourself to my doorstep, I'll just slap you to death. The ghost child thought to himself. He didn't care too much about Zhuowen as if he was an ant. At that moment, the bidding for the heavenly ghost funeral bell in the auction house was getting more and more intense. The bids were getting louder and louder. The price of the heavenly ghost funeral bell had reached a sky-high price of 500,000 contribution points. On the high platform, Chi Ye's beautiful eyes were sparkling. They were filled with a different kind of brilliance. This time, the auction house had set the standard for the heavenly ghost funeral bell to be auctioned for 500,000 contribution points. Now she had already reached the standard. Judging from the intensity of the bidding, the price would only go higher. 600,000 contribution points. Suddenly, an old voice came from the 5th VIP seat and instantly increased the price by 100,000 contribution points. The originally heated bidding suddenly quieted down. 600,000 contribution points was a very high price even for the big shots in the VIP seat. Some people had already stopped bidding. They did not have that many contribution points on them. 620,000 contribution points. 630,000 contribution points. However, there were still 2 VIP seats competing with the 5th VIP seat. 700,000 contribution points. The 5th VIP seat made another bid, raising the price to 700,000 contribution points. The 2 VIP seats that were originally bidding immediately fell silent. Chi Yi was wild with joy. She knew that she had exceeded her quota. She had actually sold the bell for 700,000 contribution points. Are there any other guests who want to bid? This is a rank 8 astral weapon. It's a treasure that can only be encountered by chance. If you miss this chance, you might never see it again. Chi Yi guided patiently. Her charming eyes swept across the VIP seats in front of her, hoping that someone would continue to bid. Unfortunately, the VIP seats were silent. No one else made another bid. 700,000 contribution points was definitely a sky-high price. Even if someone wanted to buy it, they wouldn't have enough contribution points. Chi Yi was rather disappointed. She used her small hammer to knock 3 times and finalized the ownership of the Heavenly Ghost funeral bell. Congratulations to the customer in the 5th VIP seat for successfully winning the Heavenly Ghost funeral bell. Please come to the auction house's inner hall to collect your goods later. Chi Yi said to the 5th VIP seat with a bright smile. After saying that, Chi Yi bowed deeply to the audience and winked at them. Thank you for your support. Today's auction has been successfully completed. When the next auction begins, I will inform everyone. I hope that everyone will continue to support me. In the VIP room, Zhuowen watched Chi Yi retreat behind the curtain and left with Elder Anshi and the others. The moment he walked out of the VIP room, Zhuowen seemed to have sensed something. At the stairs of the 3rd floor, there, Xing Hangshu and a group of people were slowly walking down the stairs. Xing Hangshu's cold eyes stared at Zhuowen, making him feel very uncomfortable. Zhuowen didn't pay attention to Xing Hangshu. His gaze fell on a child beside Xing Hangshu. The child looked to be around 7 or 8 years old, but he had an ancient and vicissitude aura. What moved Zhuowen even more was that the aura coming from the child was extremely terrifying. It gave him an extremely dangerous feeling. There was no doubt that the child was stronger than Elder Anshi and Li Yinglong. Perhaps sensing Zhuowen's gaze, the child slowly raised his head. A pair of hawk-like eyes fell on Zhuowen. When their eyes met, Elder Anshi's hand fell on Zhuowen's shoulder and pulled him behind him. Elder Anshi stared at the child solemnly and said, "Ice Ghost King, it's been a long time." The child's eyes narrowed slightly. He immediately looked at Elder Anshi and said coldly, "So it's Anshi. Indeed, it's been a long time. Why didn't you stay in the Void Yama realm? Why did you come to the extraterritorial battlefield?" Elder Anshi smiled faintly. "After staying in the same place for so long, I naturally got bored. So I came here to try something new." The child nodded and didn't say anything else. Instead, he led Xing Hangshu, Elder Anshi, and the others past them. From the beginning to the end, the child didn't even look at Zhuowen. However, Zhuowen knew that the child's aura had always been on him, and it was filled with malice. It wasn't until the child and the others were far away that the aura gradually disappeared. Who is this person? What a terrifying aura! Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shuo were pale. Although the child's aura was only directed at Zhuowen, it still affected them. That aura was like Mount Tai, pressing down on them until they couldn't breathe. Chapter 45-20. Li Yinglong's face darkened. He's the ghost child of one of the 3 kings of the alternate ghost tribe, the Ice Ghost King. He's already at the late stage of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. It's the Ice Ghost King of the alternate ghost tribe. No wonder his aura is so terrifying. He's not any weaker than our king of hell. Li Ying patted his chest and said fearfully. Zhuowen's eyes darkened. He did not expect to meet the king of the alternate ghost tribe in the auction house. No wonder the Ice Ghost King was so hostile towards him. Elder Anshi looked at Zhuowen and asked, "Zhuo Xiaoyu, I saw that the Ice Ghost King was targeting you the moment he arrived. Did you offend him?" Zhuowen said indifferently, "I have some grudges with Sakyamuni." Elder Anshi was enlightened. So that's why. Sakyamuni was a peerless genius nurtured by the alternate ghost tribe. For the sake of Sakyamuni, the alternate ghost tribe would do anything. Since Zhuowen had some grudges with Sakyamuni, it was equivalent to having some grudges with the entire alternate ghost tribe. Let's go. There are rules in the encampment. No fighting is allowed. We're in the encampment, so the Ice Ghost King won't dare to act recklessly. Elder Anshi said indifferently. Zhuowen nodded, but his heart was filled with malice. He knew that the Ice Ghost King had probably come for the ruins. Seemed like the ruins had really attracted a lot of true powerhouses. Once the ruins were opened, there would definitely be a fierce battle between dragons and tigers. Zhuowen felt that his strength was getting weaker. If he wanted to gain the upper hand in the ruins, he had to become stronger as soon as possible. After Zhuowen left the auction house, Su Jiang and Mi Haomiao walked out from another VIP box. I didn't expect that Zhuowen would offend the Ice Ghost King, Xing Hangshu, and the rest. He deserves it. Mi Haomiao sneered. Su Jiang's eyes flickered. Family head Mi, why don't we work together with the Ice Ghost King? With the strength of the two of us, wanting to kill Zhuowen is probably not that easy. After all, he still has Li Yinglong and Anshi with him. Mei Haomiao was tempted. If Zhuowen was alone, it would be easy for them to kill Zhuowen. Unfortunately, Zhuowen still had Anshi and Li Yinglong by his side. Even if they attacked together, the possibility of killing Zhuowen was very low. However, if he could form a connection with an expert like the Ice Ghost King, killing Zhuowen would not be difficult. After Su Jiang and Mi Haomiao contacted the Ice Ghost King, the group of them met in a nearby inn. You want to work with me? The Ice Ghost King sat on the main seat while Xing Hangshu and the others sat nearby. They all looked at Su Jiang and Mi Haomiao. Su Jiang and Mi Haomiao looked nervous. Su Jiang looked at the Ice Ghost King and licked her lip. Yes, family head Mei and I have a huge grudge against Zhuowen. I heard that Lord Ghostchild has a grudge against Zhuowen as well. That's why we want to work with you. The Ice Ghost King said indifferently. Do you think I need to work with others to kill Zhuowen? Su Jiang and Mi Haomiao looked at each other, not knowing how to reply. Xian 81 Chinese Network Update Computer. // However, if you sincerely want to work with me, I can agree to it. However, you have to show your sincerity. The Ghost Child said indifferently. Su Jiang's eyes flickered as she cupped her fist. Lord Ghostchild, I wonder if you have heard of the news of the ruins appearing in the demonic corpse cliff of the extraterritorial battlefield? The Ghost Child smiled faintly. Of course I have. Coincidentally, Nephew Xing obtained a remnant map. You want to say that you have a remnant map as well, right? Su Jiang and Mi Haomiao looked at each other and smiled bitterly. It seemed like the Ice Ghost King already had a remnant map. It was ridiculous for them to use it as a bargaining chip. The sincerity I want is not this. I want the two of you to do something for our deviant ghost tribe. Ghost Child's eyes revealed a trace of craftiness as he said indifferently. Su Jiang and Mi Haomiao quickly nodded and said, as long as Lord Ghost Child agrees to work with us to deal with Zhuowen, we are willing to work with your deviant ghost tribe. The Ghost Child smiled and waved his hand. An illusory contract appeared in front of Su Jiang and Mi Haomiao. A verbal agreement doesn't count. Come, sign the contract with me. The Ghost Child said indifferently. Su Jiang and Mi Haomiao looked at the contract carefully. After confirming that there were no problems, they signed it without hesitation. After the two of them signed, the Ghost Child pulled the contract in front of him and signed his name as well. After keeping the contract, the Ghost Child shook hands with the two of them and said, let's work together happily then. The relic is about to open, and I will work with you to deal with Zhuowen. When the time comes, you will have to keep your promise. Su Jiang and Mi Haomiao quickly nodded. The only thing on their minds was to get rid of Zhuowen as soon as possible. They did not think about anything else. In the inn where Zhuowen and the others were staying, in a huge room, Zhuowen, Elder Anshi, Duan Jipeng, and the others were all in the room. Brother Duan, you said that you found an inheritance. I wonder what level of expert left it behind? Zhuowen looked at Duan Jipeng and asked solemnly. He needed to increase his strength quickly, so he had to find a way to increase his cultivation level in a short period of time. This method could only be achieved by entering the inheritance of an expert and obtaining the good stuff inside. Duan Jipeng pondered for a moment and said, I didn't investigate it in detail back then. I only knew that the owner of the inheritance was at least a cosmic avatar. At that time, I was in a hurry to leave, so I hurriedly left a mark there and didn't go back. Zhuowen's eyes revealed a bright light as he said, Anyway, there's still some time before the ruins open. Let's go to that inheritance that Brother Duan found first. What do you think? Duan Jipeng nodded and did not object. He also felt that his strength was a little weak. If he entered the demonic corpse cliff rashly, it would be quite dangerous. If you're going to explore the legacy, it's best if you leave secretly. Otherwise, it will be very dangerous. Old man Anshi suddenly spoke. His expression became very solemn. Senior Anshi, are you worried about the Ice Ghost King? Zhuowen said. Old man Anshi nodded and continued. The Ice Ghost King came with ill intentions, and he didn't hide his malice towards you. If you swagger away like this, it's hard to avoid being targeted by the Ice Ghost King. With the Ice Ghost King's methods, it should be easy for him to find out if we have left or not. If we leave now, it will indeed be quite dangerous for us, Duan Jipeng said with a frown. I have a divine weapon that can copy the aura and create a doppelganger. Regardless of appearance or aura, it will be exactly the same as the original. The few of you leave quietly, and I will bring your doppelganger with me. Occasionally we will go out for a stroll. This will greatly dispel the Ice Ghost King's suspicions and buy you some time. As old man Anshi spoke, he took out a furnace that was spewing fire from his sleeve. Zhuowen looked at it. It was the heaven and earth furnace that he had brought back to old man Anshi. He had not expected the heaven and earth furnace to have the ability to create doppelgangers. However, the doppelganger created by the heaven and earth furnace has a time limit. It can only be used for a month, so you must return within a month, old man Anshi said with a solemn expression. Chapter 45:21. Old man Anshi took out the heaven and earth furnace and formed a seal with both hands. Instantly, terrifying flames erupted from the furnace, enveloping the entire room. Everyone, extract a trace of your aura and put it into the heaven and earth furnace. Looking at Zhuowen and the others, old man Anshi shouted in a low voice. Zhuowen and the others did not dare to be negligent. They extracted a trace of their aura and put it into the heaven and earth furnace. Whoosh! When everyone's auras entered the heaven and earth smelt, the sea of flames in the room was sucked back into the smelt. After about a quarter of an hour, the lid of the heaven and earth furnace opened, and 4 black figures rushed out. The 4 black figures were Zhuowen, Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shuo. The 4 of them looked almost exactly the same as the original. Even their aura, demeanor, and temperament were the same. Li Yinglong was surprised. Why didn't my doppelganger come out? Old man Anshi was a little embarrassed. Family Headley, your cultivation is too strong. The heaven and earth furnace is only an early stage 4th heaven's eternal realm divine tool. It can't create an avatar of celestial phenomenon of earth. Hearing this, Li Yinglong smiled bitterly. It seemed like he had to stay in the station like old man Anshi. He looked at Li Ying and Li Shuo, and he was still a little worried. The 2 of them were the most talented geniuses of the younger generation of the Su Ming family. If they were careless and died, it would be a great loss to the Su Ming family. Family Headley, don't worry. With me here, they will be fine. Zhuowen observed Li Yinglong's expression and saw the worry in his eyes. He patted his chest and promised. Young Master Zhuo, I'll have to trouble you. Li Yinglong bowed deeply to Zhuowen and said gratefully. With Zhuowen's words, he felt much more at ease. He knew how powerful Zhuowen was. As long as an avatar of heaven and earth expert did not appear, no one could do anything to him. With Zhuowen's protection, Li Shuo and Li Ying's safety was guaranteed. Come here, I'll change your appearance. Zhuowen called out to Duan Jipeng and the others, then used the primordial grand mist technique to completely change their auras and appearances. With the primordial grand mist technique's miraculous effects, even a lawful embodiment of heaven and earth expert would have a hard time seeing through the disguise. Just in case, I'll take my clone and leave the inn first. You guys can leave later. Make sure you're well hidden, got it? Old Man Anshi reminded Zhuowen and the others again before leaving the inn with Li Yinglong and his 4 clones. They headed for the central divine hall. After Old Man Anshi left, some of the spies scattered around the inn also quietly retreated and secretly followed Old Man Anshi. Those spies who were monitoring us have all left. Zhuowen's divine sense silently spread out. After discovering that those malicious gazes had left, he left the inn with Duan Jipeng and the other 2 and headed towards the entrance of the foreign battlefield. The entrance to the extraterritorial battlefield in the primeval Heavenly Tao Academy's encampment was located in the northern region of the encampment. There stood a huge blood-red door. This blood-red door was extremely strange. The door frame was supported by some kind of huge white bone. On the surface of the white bone, there was blood and flesh wriggling. A pungent smell of blood assailed their nostrils, making them feel nauseous. On both sides of the blood-red door stood 2 burly armored soldiers. Only a pair of bone-chilling eyes could be seen behind their dark and cold masks. They were staring at the cultivators entering and exiting the blood-red door. When Zhuowen and the others arrived at the blood-red door, they saw a long queue. Many cultivators took out their tokens for the guards to check. Go in. When Zhuowen's group of 4 took out their qualification tokens, a guard merely glanced at them before allowing them to pass. Is this the foreign battlefield? After Zhuowen passed through the blood-red door and entered the blood-red starry sky behind the door, he looked around and realized that the blood-red color in the starry sky was due to the strange blood-red clouds nearby. Translator, Nioibo Studio Editor, Nioibo Studio Mobile Phone, // swoosh. After the other cultivators entered the foreign battlefield, they rushed towards the front of the foreign battlefield without looking back. Soon, they disappeared without a trace. Follow me. The inheritance is some distance away from here. If we go at full speed, it will take about 3 days. After Duan Jipeng finished speaking to Zhuowen and the others, he took the lead and rushed towards the west. The 4 of them didn't rush out for long before they saw a huge battle in front of them. This was a hilly area full of ravines. The hills were not tall, but they rose from the ground like acne on the human skin. They looked extremely ugly. In one of the ravines, 4 figures were fighting fiercely. Among the 4 figures, one was a human cultivator, while the other 3 were completely different from the human race. They had 4 limbs like humans, but their bodies were covered in green scales. Their cheeks were more like crocodiles, revealing rows of sharp teeth that glinted coldly. These 3 foreign cultivators were not weak, and they forced the human cultivator into a desperate situation. When Zhuowen and the others approached, the human cultivator had already been completely killed by the 3 foreign cultivators. One of the foreign race cultivators took the human cultivator's command medallion and storage artifact before joining up with the other 2 foreign race cultivators. They looked at Zhuowen's group of 4 with vigilance. Are they the foreign cultivators from other places? Zhuowen looked at the 3 foreign cultivators silently and asked Duan Jipeng with interest. These 3 foreign cultivators did not have a high level of cultivation. They were around the mid-cosmic Dharma stage, but the murderous aura on them was much more terrifying than that of the Nigu Starlight stage cultivators. Clearly, this was the result of years of training in the foreign battlefield. Run. The 3 foreign cultivators could naturally see that Zhuowen's overall strength was much stronger than theirs, and they had the advantage in numbers. If they fought, they had no chance of winning. Want to run? It's not that easy. Zhuowen shook his head and took a step forward, turning into a shadow in the void. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of the 3 foreign cultivators. Boom. At the same time, Zhuowen's right fist punched out, smashing directly in front of the foreign cultivator. "You're courting death." The foreign cultivator saw that Zhuowen did not even take out a divine weapon and attacked with his bare hands. He laughed coldly and slashed out with the divine sword in his hand. The terrifying sword light swept out like a crescent moon and landed heavily on Zhuowen's fist. But to his horror, the sword light that he had thrown out with all his strength was easily shattered by Zhuowen's fist force. Clang! Zhuowen's fist force was unstoppable. It landed heavily on the foreign cultivator's divine sword and smashed it into pieces. The fist force was like a rainbow. Amidst the countless fragments of the divine sword, it landed on the foreign cultivator's chest and directly penetrated it. Chapter 45-22. Pucci. Blood gushed out like rain. The foreign race cultivator's eyes widened in fear, and he died with his eyes wide open. When Zhuowen finished off the foreign race cultivator, the other two foreign race cultivators retreated in fear. XDW-8 The foreign race cultivator in the lead was the strongest among the three of them. Now that he was killed so easily, there was no need to mention them. However, not long after the two of them retreated, they encountered Duan Jipeng's group. With Duan Jipeng's strength, he killed the two foreign race cultivators in one move. After finishing off the foreign race cultivators, Duan Jipeng took the qualification tokens and storage divine tools from the three foreign race cultivators. He threw the three qualification tokens to Zhuowen, Li Ying, and Li Shuo and said, "Most of the contribution points in the extraterritorial battlefield come from killing foreign race cultivators. The stronger the foreign race cultivator you kill, the more contribution points they have in their qualification tokens. Then you can get the contribution points in their tokens." Zhuowen took the token Duan Jipeng threw over and checked it. He found that there were a total of 30,000 contribution points in the token. He didn't argue and put the 30,000 contribution points into his own token. Zhuowen sighed in his heart. No wonder he improved so quickly in the extraterritorial battlefield. Entering the extraterritorial battlefield, one could fight with all kinds of foreign races. Not only could one train their battle experience and strength, but they could also get rich contribution points to exchange for cultivation resources. Under such high-intensity training, it was impossible for one's strength not to become stronger. Of course, the extraterritorial battlefield was also extremely dangerous. While you were hunting others, others were also hunting you. Here, you could be killed by someone stronger than you at any time. Duan Jipeng divided the items of the three foreign race cultivators, and the four of them set off again. Along the way, they basically buried their heads in rushing. Even if they encountered a battle, they didn't pay attention to it. Of course, some foreign race cultivators treated them as prey. Those who took the initiative to attack them were basically killed. 3 days later, the four of them arrived at an area full of ring-shaped mountains. The ring-shaped mountain in this area was tens of thousands of feet tall. Its surroundings were like high walls, and the central part was concave. The inheritance is in the center of this area. There is the largest ring-shaped mountain there. The inheritance is in that ring-shaped mountain. Duan Jipeng stopped at the foot of a mountain, and his gaze became serious and solemn. The three of you, that ring-shaped mountain is extremely dangerous. You must be prepared. At that time, I didn't have the confidence to go in, so I just made a mark and left in a hurry. Duan Jipeng solemnly reminded. Zhuowen and the other two nodded. Duan Jipeng had already mentioned the dangers of the ring-shaped mountains many times. Suddenly, an ear-piercing buzzing sound came from the horizon. "Look, what's that?" Li Ying raised his head and pointed to the sky. There was a trace of doubt in his voice. Zhuowen looked in the direction Li Ying was pointing at and saw a huge black cloud in the sky. The black cloud was sinking rapidly. To be more precise, it was rushing towards them. When the black cloud gradually approached them, they finally saw the true appearance of the black cloud. It was actually made up of many black insects. These insects looked like beetles, and the iron armor on their backs flowed with strange black lines. Countless insects rushed over without any regard for their lives, forming a huge black cloud that enveloped Zhuo Wen's group of 4. "Let's go, we can't touch these insects. They specialize in devouring divine power. Once we are entangled, we will be sucked dry by them." Duan Jipeng's eyes revealed a look of horror, and he quickly led everyone to the depths of the ring-shaped mountain belt. He had seen with his own eyes that many cultivators were quickly sucked dry by these insects. Among them were experts at the level of starlight defying ancient. The 4 of them quickly fled, and the black cloud chased after them, and its speed was getting faster and faster. "It's over, these insects are too fast." Li Shua looked back and found that the black cloud was less than 100 meters away from them, and the distance was getting closer and closer. Despair rose in his heart. Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy. He didn't even think about it and took out the chariot. "Come up." Zhuowen jumped up and shouted at Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shua. Duan Jipeng and the other 2 had no time to think and jumped on the chariot. At the moment when the black cloud was about to wrap them up, the chariot moved completely and disappeared in the blink of an eye. When the chariot stopped, they had appeared in the deepest part of the ring-shaped mountain belt. There stood a huge ring-shaped mountain with a diameter of 100,000 feet. This ring-shaped mountain was much larger than the other ring-shaped mountains around it. It was incomparably tall, and the whole mountain was filled with an ancient and vicissitudes aura. What was more strange was that the surface of this ring-shaped mountain was densely covered with cracks. If one looked carefully, they would find that there was a certain pattern in these cracks, as if they were some kind of alien language, telling the ancient story of this ring-shaped mountain. "Brother Duan, is the inheritance you mentioned in this ring-shaped mountain?" Zhuowen jumped down from the chariot, his eyes falling on the huge mountain in front of him, and asked faintly. At this moment Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shua were still in a state of confusion. The speed of the chariot was too fast, and they had not completely reacted until now. When Zhuowen asked again, Duan Jipeng finally reacted. "Yes, the inheritance is here. My mark is still here." Duan Jipeng pointed at the handprint on a rock not far away and said with a smile, "The inheritance is in this ring-shaped mountain." "In other words, we have to enter the central depression of the ring-shaped mountain?" Li Ying asked. "Yes. Whether there is danger inside or not, in fact, I am not sure. I have not entered before, but I confirmed that there is an inheritance inside," Duan Jipeng said with a wry smile. "Let's go in and explore, won't we know?" Zhuowen kept the chariot and took the lead, flying up the mountain. This ring-shaped mountain was too high, more than 100,000 feet. Zhuowen and the others spent a lot of time to reach the top of the mountain and enter the central area of the ring-shaped mountain. In the central depression of the ring-shaped mountain, clouds and mist lingered, hazy drizzling, and it felt like an otherworldly paradise. Zhuowen and the others did not dare to be careless. In the process of going in, their nerves were completely tense. When they finally reached the bottom, they did not encounter any danger, and everything seemed very calm and peaceful. At the bottom, there was a vast plain, and the fog was much thinner than above. "What are these stone statues for?" Li Ying noticed that around the plain, there were stone statues that were dozens of feet tall, and his eyes were full of surprise. These stone statues were very strange. Each of them had a huge head, occupying 2/3 of the entire stone statue, but their bodies were very short. The stone statues had strange smiles on their faces, and their eyes were slightly squinted, as if they were laughing at something. "What a strange stone statue! Why does it look a little creepy?" Li Shua muttered to himself, rubbing his arms with a trace of fear in his eyes. Chapter 45-23. Don't stare at these stone statues. These stone statues are not good people. Follow me. Duan Jipeng hurriedly reminded them and took the lead to walk forward. Li Ying and Li Shuo hurriedly withdrew their gazes and did not dare to stare at the stone statues again. Zhuowen was very calm from the beginning to the end. When they left, they did not notice that the strange stone statues suddenly changed their positions and turned to face their backs. The smile on their faces became more and more strange and unfathomable. The surroundings were still shrouded in fog, and the range of visibility was about 30 to 40 feet. Even their divine senses were restrained by some strange power. We're back. Suddenly, Duan Jipeng stopped. He looked around and found that this was the place where the stone statues stood just now. Moreover, he also found that the position of these stone statues was not the same. At first, the stone statues were facing the back, but now they were facing the group with the same eerie smile on their faces. Illusory array? Li Ying frowned. Zhuowen shook his head and said, "There is no aura of any array pattern here. It should not be an illusory array." When Duan Jipeng and the others heard that, they all fell silent and frowned. They naturally trusted Zhuowen's level of array principle. Then, if it was not an illusory array, what was it? It made them return to the original place. Zhuowen's eyes revealed a pondering look and fell on the surrounding stone statues. "Let's continue forward," Zhuowen suddenly said as he lifted his foot and walked forward. Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shuo were puzzled. However, out of their trust in Zhuowen, they did not say anything. When the four of them had just walked more than 10 steps, Zhuowen, who was walking in front, suddenly turned around. His eyes became sharp and cold, as if they contained an iceberg. "It is indeed the problem of these stone statues," Zhuowen said coldly. Duan Jipeng and the others also turned around and were shocked to find that the position of the stone statues behind them had changed again. These stone statues were facing the front, and facing them, the strange smiles on their faces became more and more intense. They instantly understood that the reason why they hadn't made any progress was because of the stone statues. Kakik. Cold and terrifying laughter came from the many stone statues behind him, like the howling of owls in the middle of the night, making people feel very uncomfortable. Clang! Clang! A strange cracking sound resounded in the empty space. Zhuowen and the others noticed that cracks had appeared on the surface of the stone statue in front of them. When the cracks spread to the entire stone statue, the latter completely shattered, and black shadows rushed out from the stone statue. More and more black silhouettes darted out, continuously gathering and fusing in midair. Finally, they manifested into a huge worm-like thing that was over 1,000 feet long. The head of this worm had the face of a stone statue. There was a strange smile on its face, as if it was sneering or mocking. The strange laughter in the surroundings grew louder and louder, lingering in everyone's ears. It seems that the only way to solve this puzzle is to destroy this thing. Zhuowen's eyes suddenly flashed with a cold light. He took a step forward and rushed toward the black shadow worm at an extremely fast speed. The moment he arrived in front of the worm, sword light flashed in his right palm, and the Taiyu sacred sword appeared in his hand. As he slashed out, the terrifying sword light burst out like endless thunder and landed heavily on the worm's body. Zhuowen passed by the worm and frowned. He turned around and found that the worm was unharmed, while Zhuowen's sword light had pierced through the worm and landed on the ground, creating a huge crater. Is it an illusion? Zhuowen looked at the worm turning around and looking at him as if it was mocking him, and his heart sank slightly. Brother Zhuo, we're here to help you. Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shuo were the first to arrive. They rushed over and attacked the worms with all their strength. This time, Zhuowen saw clearly that the moment their attacks landed on the worm's body became illusory. Then, all 3 of their attacks missed, and they fell to the ground one after another. The moment their attacks missed, the worm's body suddenly became solid, and a palm grew out of its huge body and slammed heavily on Li Ying's body. Li Ying was caught off guard and was hit by the palm. He groaned and spat out blood and flew backward, landing heavily on the ground. Li Shuo and Duan Jipeng had already retreated and landed not far away from Zhuowen. Li Ying, are you okay? Li Shuo quickly came to Li Ying's side and helped him up. XDW8 Li Ying shook his head and said, I'm fine. It's just a minor injury. But this thing is too strange. It's hard to tell if it's real or fake. The worm was silent. It looked fat, but its speed was extremely fast. It continued to rush towards Li Ying and Li Shuo like a bolt of lightning. What shocked Li Ying and Li Shuo was that a huge mouth suddenly appeared on the worm's body. Every mouth was filled with white and sharp teeth, looking ferocious and terrifying. Run! Li Shuo was shocked and quickly retreated with Li Ying. But what made their faces ugly was that the worm's speed suddenly increased. It was much faster than them. In the blink of an eye, it appeared in front of them. A huge mouth rushed towards them, wanting to swallow them both. At this critical moment, Zhuowen silently appeared and stomped on the worm's head, smashing it to the ground. Only then did Li Shuo and Li Ying escape from the tiger's mouth. They looked at the worm under Zhuowen's foot with lingering fear. Roar! The worm suddenly roared and its body became illusory again. It directly passed through Zhuowen and escaped far away. It looked at Zhuowen with fear. It could naturally feel that Zhuowen was the most powerful person among the four. If it was a one-on-one fight, it would definitely not be a match for him. However, it was quite proud and did not run away. It was very confident in its special ability. Even if it was no match for Zhuowen, it could use its special ability to toy with these people in the palm of its hand. Roar! The worm attacked again. This time, it learned its lesson and did not fight with Zhuowen head-on. Instead, it focused on interfering. If there was a chance, it would mercilessly attack Li Ying and Li Shuo. Obviously, it could see that Zhuowen and Duan Jipeng were not to be trifled with. Therefore, it did not fight with the two of them head-on. Li Ying and Li Shuo were unlucky. Under the repeated attacks of the worm, their injuries became more and more terrifying. They were almost covered with cuts and bruises. Brother Zhuo, save us! Li Ying was on the verge of collapse as he pleaded to Zhuowen. He was really driven crazy by the worm. Every time he was forced into a life-and-death crisis. If Zhuowen and Duan Jipeng did not react fast enough, he and Li Shuo might have died. Chapter 45-24. Brother Duan, protect Li Ying and Li Shuo. I'll kill it. Zhuowen's eyes flashed coldly as he stomped the ground with his right foot. Suddenly, the ground seemed to explode as deep cracks appeared one after another. Zhuowen leaped up and charged toward the worm like a violent bolt of lightning. The worm sneered and charged at Zhuowen with its huge body. However, its body was becoming more and more illusory. Obviously, it intended to penetrate through Zhuowen and attack Li Ying and Li Shuo. Whoosh! A strong gust of wind swept over. In the blink of an eye, Zhuowen and the worm collided. The worm had already turned into an illusory body and penetrated Zhuowen. However, at this moment, a strong chill burst out from the depths of Zhuowen's eyes. He held the Taiyu sacred sword in his right hand and suddenly flicked it. The sword swept out like water and slashed toward the worm's head. Slash! A jet of dark green blood spurted out. The worm suddenly screamed as its huge body fell not far away. The worm's strange face and its eyes were wide open as it stared at Zhuowen in disbelief. Half of its forehead had been sliced off, and dark green blood spurted out. It looked very tragic. You! The worm looked at Zhuowen in disbelief as its huge body trembled slightly. His originally illusory body also gradually solidified. Just as I thought. Little worm, I've been observing you for a long time. Every time your body turns illusory, your head will be the first to become solid. That's your flaw. Zhuowen's expression was calm as he continued, however, your reaction is quite fast. That sword was going to cut off your head. What a pity! The worm's body trembled even more violently. The ability that it was most proud of had been completely seen through. Run. Without thinking, the worm wriggled its huge body and fled into the distance like a bolt of lightning. It wasn't strong enough to begin with, and the only reason it was able to contend with Zhuowen and the others until now was because of its special ability. Now that its special ability had been seen through by Zhuowen, if it didn't escape, wouldn't it be courting death? Do you think you can escape? The corners of Zhuowen's mouth curled up slightly, but the depths of his eyes were filled with murderous intent. He used the primordial movement technique and turned into a purple-gold shadow. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of the worm. Heaven and Earth Hong Meng, a silver lining. Zhuowen swung his sword and used all his divine arts. A sword light seemed to have connected heaven and earth as it stood on the worm's head. The worm groaned and immediately entered its illusory body. Its head also became illusory. But Zhuowen was in no hurry. He slashed out with a sword again, displaying the divine ability sword shaking 9 heavens. Countless sword lights turned into a terrifying sword chi storm and quickly enveloped the worm's huge body. Zhuowen was hidden in the sword lights. The Taiyu sacred sword in his hand turned into a sword light and quickly landed on the worm's head. At this moment, the worm's head happened to leave its illusory state, and the Taiyu sacred sword directly penetrated its head. Have a safe journey. Zhuowen looked down at the worm indifferently. He suddenly flipped his right palm, and the Taiyu sacred sword spun rapidly. The worm's head suddenly exploded. The worm's huge body fell to the ground and gradually became illusory. Finally, it completely disappeared. When the worms disappeared, the strange fog that shrouded the surroundings also dissipated a lot, and the vision suddenly became much clearer. Look, there's a staircase in front. Suddenly, Li Ying pointed ahead. There was a white jade staircase that went up diagonally. There was still a hazy fog in front of the white jade staircase. They couldn't see clearly what was in the depths of the white jade staircase. Li Ying and Li Shuo, heal your injuries here. Then we'll go. Zhuowen said as he sat cross-legged not far away and narrowed his eyes. Li Ying and Li Shuo smiled bitterly. They each took out healing pellets from their storage divine treasures, sat straight and began healing their wounds. After about half a day, when Li Ying and Li Shuo's injuries were almost completely healed, the group of 4 resumed their journey. It's so cold. When the group of people stepped onto the white jade stairs, they immediately felt a wave of extreme coldness sweep over them, causing them to involuntarily tremble. What is this white jade staircase made of? Why is it so cold? Duan Jipeng asked in surprise. Let's continue. The chill on the white jade staircase is not good. It's harmful to stay on it for too long. Zhuowen urged as he stepped forward toward the white jade staircase. The white jade staircase's slope was very gentle. It didn't extend upward. Instead, it extended forward. The group of 4 quickly climbed up the white jade staircase and headed toward the depth. The white jade staircase seemed to have no end. The surrounding fog blurred their vision. After an unknown period of time, they finally reached the end of the white jade staircase. That's a palace? Li Ying exclaimed, attracting the attention of the others. Zhuowen looked over. Indeed, at the end of the path, he saw many palaces floating in 5-colored auspicious clouds. Inside the palaces there were colorful lights, red lights, and green light. Graceful figures were looming in the palaces. It was a scene of singing and dancing. It's strange. Why are there such palaces in the ruins? Duan Jipeng frowned and found it unbelievable. In his impression, the land of inheritance should be dead and gloomy. Such a scene of singing and dancing was really against common sense. Is this an illusion? Li Shuo frowned. No. It's not an illusion. It should be real. It's not now. It's a scene of the past. Zhuowen stepped forward slowly and walked toward the palaces in front of him. His expression was calm and indifferent. His divine soul was much stronger than Duan Jipeng's, and his array Tao had reached the fourth heavenly layer of the eternal realm. Therefore, he could see at a glance that what was in front of him was not an illusion, but something that had happened in the past. However, the terrain of this place was very special. It was like a projection, reenacting something that had happened at a certain time in the past. Duan Jipeng and the others looked at each other, but they all chose to follow Zhuowen and followed closely behind him. As Zhuowen walked through the hall, he saw the banquet being held, the dancers dancing gracefully, and the experts chatting freely. When he reached the end of the hall, there was a huge divine throne floating there. A stalwart middle-aged man was sitting on the divine throne. His right elbow was supporting the armrest, and his palm was supporting his cheek. The depths of his eyes were full of sadness. The middle-aged man's eyes were deep and profound. He slowly glanced at the scene of singing and dancing in the palaces around him. Finally, his eyes fell on Zhuowen and the other three. At this moment, sadness swept over them. It moved Zhuowen and the other three, and they were all infected by his sadness. "You have come." The middle-aged man's faint voice came, and then the palaces around him collapsed one after another, turning into a sea of fire in an instant. The middle-aged man finally walked down from the divine throne. His whole body exuded a shocking aura, which was shocking to the world. At this moment, the surrounding scene completely disappeared. Chapter 45-25. When all the images disappeared, what appeared in front of the four of them was a broken wall. From the surrounding ruins, they could vaguely see the outline of the Jade Palace. The middle-aged man on the throne in the image should be the owner of this ruin. That should be his starry sky world. Duan Jipeng's eyes flickered as he spoke slowly, but he was quite shocked. Duan Jipeng was also at the inverse ancient starlight level, and his body had nurtured a huge starry sky world. However, his starry sky world was far from the starry sky world in the image, and they were not even on the same level. We should be in the ruins of that expert's starry sky world. It seems that the battle back then was very tragic, and the starry sky world was completely shattered. Zhuowen's eyes became very solemn. The owner of this starry sky world was probably stronger than the 7 emotions, 6 desires Holy Lord. He was an expert who was half a step into the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Otherwise, the starry sky world in the image would not be so glorious and powerful. The laws inside were more complete and powerful than the starry sky world of the 7 emotions, 6 desires Holy Lord. This person's inheritance must still be in the ruins of this starry sky world. Let's search here. Let's see if we can find anything. If we find anything, send a signal immediately, Zhuowen said as he walked forward. He was walking in the direction where the divine throne of that expert was located. Duan Jipeng and the other 2 searched in the other 3 directions. Zhuowen walked slowly to the divine throne. The divine throne that appeared in front of him had long been torn apart and turned into countless fragments. Even though countless years had passed, the fragments of the divine throne were still flowing with a unique divine light, as if they were spiritual. Beside the divine throne, a skeleton stood tall and straight, staring straight ahead. The skeleton was golden, as if it was gilded, and it exuded a powerful aura. Zhuowen stared silently at the golden skeleton. He knew that the middle-aged man had been defeated in the battle back then, and it was a crushing defeat. He could feel the unwillingness, resentment, and anger contained in the golden skeleton. "Give me your inheritance. When I become strong enough, I will avenge you." Zhuowen looked straight at the golden skeleton and said indifferently. The moment he entered the ruins, his divine sense had already scanned the area, but he didn't find any mechanisms or passageways. He understood that the resources in this starry sky world had either been plundered or hidden by the owner of the starry sky world. Now Zhuowen was gambling. He was betting that the resources of this ruin were hidden by the master of the starlight world. No matter how angry you are, you have already fallen. But your obsession is still here, which proves that you are very unwilling. But so what? A mere obsession will not be able to take revenge. Zhuowen continued, only by finding a successor and allowing that successor to inherit your will would you have a trace of a chance to take revenge. Now you can only choose me. Otherwise, I will erase your obsession, and your hatred will disappear forever. You have no choice. As soon as his voice fell, the originally motionless golden skeleton suddenly moved, and a strange creaking sound came from the entire skeleton. The golden skeleton raised its right hand and pointed its sharp finger bone behind it. Zhuowen looked up and found that behind the golden skeleton there was a huge rock that was dozens of feet tall. At first glance, this rock looked very ordinary, but upon closer inspection, one could find many patterns on the surface of the rock, which had a specific pattern. Zhuowen walked in front of the rock and carefully observed it, and immediately found that these patterns were array patterns. These array patterns should have been inlaid into the surface of the rock by an array master with special means. If not for Zhuowen's high array Dao level, he might not have been able to discover the uniqueness of the patterns, let alone other cultivators who didn't understand array Dao at all. In order to hide the array patterns on the surface of the rock, forming a special pattern, I'm afraid there should be something important under this rock. Zhuowen couldn't help but look at the golden skeleton behind him again, and he vaguely understood that the golden skeleton had chosen him. And under this rock, there was a great possibility that the inheritance of the golden skeleton existed. Peak of the third level of the eternal level array pattern. Zhuowen walked around the rock a few times and completely determined the level of the array pattern on the surface of the rock, his eyes full of confidence. A formation pattern of this level was not too difficult for him. Zhuowen jumped up, landed on the rock, and sat down cross-legged. With a wave of his right sleeve, a series of array discs swept out and surrounded his body, rotating in a special trajectory. Zhuowen's hands formed a complicated seal, and a series of complex and mysterious array patterns swept out with his every move and finally fell on the surface of the rock. As the array patterns fell, the patterns on the surface of the rock gradually lit up, as if they were stimulated by some mysterious force. When the light of the rock patterns reached its peak, these mysterious patterns separated from the surface of the rock and floated in midair. In the end, the glowing patterns formed a sword chi in the air, and then fiercely smashed down on the rock. Zhuowen had already noticed that something was wrong and left the rock. Boom! The sword chi was extremely terrifying, and in the blink of an eye, the rock was blasted into pieces. Zhuowen noticed that under the rock fragments, there was an array that emitted a dark golden light. A teleportation array. Zhuowen's eyes lit up, and he immediately recognized the type of dark golden array. First, summon Brother Duan and the others. Zhuowen did not rush into the array, but instead sent a signal to Duan Jipeng and the others. Brother Zhuo, did you find anything? After a while, Duan Jipeng was the first to arrive, and he asked with bright eyes. Zhuowen nodded, pointed to the dark golden array under the rock fragments, and said, "This array should be the teleportation array that leads to this place of inheritance." Duan Jipeng was pleasantly surprised, and he could not help but give Zhuowen a thumbs up. "As expected of Brother Zhuo, you found something so quickly. Why haven't Li Ying and Li Shuo come yet?" Zhuowen saw that Li Ying and Li Shuo had not returned after a long time, and he frowned slightly. Duan Jipeng shook his head and said, "I searched separately from the two of them, and I don't know their situation. I'll send a signal to them to see." As he spoke, Duan Jipeng took out a communication jade talisman and sent a signal to Li Ying and Li Shuo. However, the situation was the same as Zhuowen's. Li Ying and Li Shuo did not reply at all. Did something happen? Duan Jipeng frowned. Let's go. Let's go to the direction where Li Ying and Li Shuo are searching." Zhuowen also noticed that something was wrong, and he called out to Duan Jipeng, and they rushed to the west of the ruins. He remembered that when Li Ying and Li Shua had been searching, they had been heading towards the west. Chapter 45-26. The two of them headed west, passing by ruins, and found many skeletons. When they reached the western edge, they found a swamp in front of them. This swamp was full of strange white weeds that looked like human hand bones. They just stood in the middle of the swamp. The water in the swamp was dark green, and it kept bubbling like some kind of poison. It was horrifying. In the swamp, Zhuowen and Duan Jipeng saw two figures. These two figures were Li Ying and Li Shua. The two of them had intoxicated eyes, and saliva dripped from the corners of their mouths as they walked toward the center of the swamp. It was as if there was something beautiful in the center of the swamp that made them intoxicated. However, in the eyes of Zhuowen and Duan Jipeng, there was a huge whirlpool in the center of the swamp that swallowed everything that approached. There was no doubt that as long as Li Ying and Li Shua entered the whirlpool, they would likely die without a burial place. What's wrong with these two guys? I'll go and pull them back. Duan Jipeng frowned. He snorted coldly and prepared to charge into the swamp, but he was stopped by Zhuowen. Brother Duan, there's something wrong with this swamp. Don't enter rashly, Zhuowen said in a low voice. Duan Jipeng calmed down and also felt that something was wrong. Li Ying and Li Shua were elites of the cosmic manifestation, and their minds were quite firm. It was impossible for them to fall into a trap so easily. Obviously, this swamp was definitely not simple. Zhuowen thought for a moment, and summoned a heaven-breaking realm demonic beast from the large world. As soon as this demonic beast appeared, it received Zhuowen's order and charged into the swamp. The moment the demonic beast entered the swamp, the bone-like weeds that grew in the swamp suddenly moved and stretched out, tightly grabbing the demonic beast's limbs. Roar! The demonic beast roared in shock and anger, struggling with all its might, but it was useless. These bone-like weeds pushed the demonic beast into the swamp, and then spurted out waves of strange green mist. After inhaling the green gas, the struggling demonic beast immediately calmed down and its eyes became lifeless. The hand-bone weed released the demonic beast, and the demonic beast obediently walked towards the whirlpool in the middle of the swamp. I see. It seems like the problem lies with these hand bones and weeds. Zhuowen's gaze was heavy as he stroked his chin with his right hand. The green gas emitted by the hand bone could even affect Li Ying and Li Shua. It was definitely not simple. A bitter smile appeared on Duan Jipeng's face as he said, "Brother Zhua, thank goodness you stopped me. This swamp is indeed not a friendly place." Duan Jipeng saw very clearly just now that the hand bones in the swamp were extremely powerful, and their speed was so fast that even he couldn't react in time. If he were to barge in rashly, the odds would indeed be against him. Unless we're faster than the hand weeds. Duan Jipeng couldn't help but look at Zhuowen. He knew that Zhuowen possessed a chariot, divine chariot, and its speed was unparalleled. Let me save them. You wait for me here. Zhuowen waved his sleeve and took out the chariot, divine chariot. The hand bones and weeds in the swamp were indeed too fast. Even Zhuowen might not be able to dodge them, so he directly chose to use the chariot, divine chariot. Whoosh! The chariot, divine chariot was like a bolt of lightning, disappearing on the spot and instantly appearing beside Li Ying and Li Shua. Whoosh! 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 The moment the chariot, divine chariot appeared above the swamp, countless hand bones and weeds in the swamp crazily emerged and grabbed at Zhuowen. Zhuowen's eyes were cold as he lifted Li Ying and Li Shua with both hands and drove the chariot, divine chariot away from the swamp. Rumble! The moment Zhuowen left, countless hand bones and weeds heavily bombarded the place where Zhuowen was standing. The space exploded with extremely terrifying and ear-piercing sounds. Whoosh! The chariot, divine chariot returned to Duan Jipeng's side. Zhuowen put away the chariot and threw Li Ying and Li Shua to Duan Jipeng. What's wrong with me? I seem to have had a dream, a very long dream. Li Ying and Li Shuo quickly woke up, their eyes filled with confusion. The two of you were confused by the swamp and almost entered the whirlpool at the center of the swamp. Duan Jiping pointed at the swamp in front of them and said to Li Ying and Li Shuo. The two of them looked at Duan Jiping and finally saw the true appearance of the swamp, especially the whirlpool at the center. It was like a giant mouth that could never be full and could devour anything. Li Ying and Li Shuo were frightened. Of course, they could see how dangerous the whirlpool in the middle of the swamp was. If they rashly entered the central whirlpool, they would be dead for sure. Many thanks to young Master Zhuo for saving our lives. Li Ying and Li Shuo quickly thanked Zhuowen. If it weren't for Zhuowen, they would have been dead by now. Let's go. Brother Zhuo has found the entrance to the land of inheritance, Duan Jiping said with a smile. Li Ying and Li Shuo nodded. Just as they were about to leave with Zhuowen and Duan Jiping, a terrifying roar came from the swamp behind them. Roar, roar, roar. The roar was louder than the previous one. It was a powerful sound wave that shook their eardrums and resounded through the clouds. Immediately after, Zhuowen and the others were shocked to find that the swamp suddenly collapsed and the whirlpool at the center closed. Boom, boom, boom. Deep in the swamp, there were rapid vibrations. The vibrations were getting stronger and more terrifying. It was as if something was quickly approaching from the depths of the swamp. Let's go. Zhuowen didn't even think about it. He took the three of them and rushed toward the ruins of the Divine Throne. The moment they arrived at the ruins of the Divine Throne, the ground began to shake violently. Then, the ground cracked into pieces and terrifying abyssal cracks appeared one after another. Roar. An earth-shattering roar came. Zhuowen and the others saw a huge black shadow leap out from the swamp. This black shadow's appearance was filled with strange and smelly mud. It was very large, almost 100 feet in size. On the dirty surface of the mud, strange eyeballs appeared one after another, and they were spinning rapidly. Suddenly, these eyeballs seemed to have locked onto a target and shot their gazes toward Zhuowen and the others. Roar. This strange mud shadow let out a terrifying roar again, and began to charge toward Zhuowen and the others without any regard for its life. So fast. Duan Jiping's face was filled with shock. The speed of this strange black shadow shocked Zhuowen and the other three. Quickly activate the teleportation array. Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy. He took out a pile of chaos gems and began to activate the teleportation array. Suddenly, the dark gold array burst out with dark gold light and enveloped the four of them. When the four of them were successfully teleported away, the black shadow happened to rush over, but it pounced on empty air. Roar. The mud shadow let out a furious roar and began to unleash terrifying attacks. Countless viscous liquids filled the entire space and corroded everything. Chapter 45-27. The light of teleportation flashed and disappeared. When Zhuowen and the others opened their eyes, they found that they were no longer in the ruins, but in a new and unfamiliar environment. This was a stone tunnel, and the surroundings were inlaid with blazing gems, brightly illuminating the dark tunnel. What a rich medicinal smell! Duan Jiping's eyes lit up as he sniffed lightly and said ecstatically. Zhuowen was surprised. He did not expect to smell such a rich medicinal smell when he had just teleported here. It could be seen that there should be a considerable number of divine herbs in the depths of this tunnel. Let's go. Let's go and take a look, Zhuowen said, and the four of them walked into the depths of the tunnel in an orderly manner. Zhuowen had become the backbone of the four of them. His words were like an order in the eyes of Duan Jiping and the others, and it was difficult to disobey. The tunnel was not long, and the four of them soon reached the end. At the end of the tunnel was a huge underground palace. The entire palace was golden and dazzling, with carved railings and jade bricks. It was magnificent, and one could tell at a glance that it was high-end and luxurious. Look, what's that? Liang suddenly exclaimed and pointed at the center of the palace with his right hand. Zhuowen and the others looked and found that there were 4 large pools in the center of the palace. Each pool had a different color: red, yellow, black, and white. The surface of the pools was steaming hot, and bubbles were rising. A rich medicinal smell diffused from each pool and spread throughout the entire palace. These are medicinal pools. Such a rich medicinal smell! How many divine herbs were added in here? Duan Jipeng came to the center of the palace and stopped in front of a red medicinal pool. Breathing in the rich medicinal smell, he felt refreshed and comfortable. Li Ying and Li Shua could not help but walk forward, and their eyes were also intoxicated. Zhuowen, on the other hand, did not move at all. His gaze swept across the 4 medicinal pools before finally landing at the front of the palace. There, an incomparably huge cauldron was suspended in the air. This cauldron was divided into 3 levels. The upper level was where the medicine was placed, the middle level was where the medicine was refined, and the lower level was where the fire was stored. The entire cauldron was forged from pure white divine jade, and it was bright and flawless. It was like a pure and holy celestial maiden that floated in midair and couldn't be disrespected when viewed from afar. Zhuowen could tell at a glance that this furnace was absolutely a top-grade furnace. Looks like the owner of this ruin was an extremely powerful alchemist when he was alive. Zhuowen muttered to himself. From this furnace, he could tell that ordinary alchemists definitely did not have the qualifications to possess such a top-grade furnace. Brother Zhua, these 4 medicinal pools. Although Duan Jipeng's eyes were filled with desire, he knew that he had to obtain Zhuowen's approval before using the medicinal pool. After all, Zhuowen was their leader. Li Ying and Li Shua also turned their heads, looking at Zhuowen with eager eyes. The 4 pools will be divided equally. You 3 can choose first. I still want to look at the other areas of this palace to see if I can find anything else. Zhuowen glanced at the 4 medicinal pools in the center of the palace and said lightly. Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shua cheered and could not wait to jump into the medicinal pools that they had chosen. As expected of the medicinal pools, the essence of the divine medicine is gathered here, and it is far more effective in assisting cultivation than divine medicine and divine pills. Li Ying sighed with relief. I really didn't expect that after so many years, these 4 medicinal pools still have medicinal efficacy. I'm afraid these 4 medicinal pools are of extremely high grade. Li Shua also said happily. Stop talking nonsense. This is a rare opportunity. Absorb the medicinal efficacy of the medicinal pools as soon as possible. With the vigorous medicinal efficacy in the medicinal pools, 1 day is equivalent to 100 years of cultivation in the outside world. Duan Jipeng said in a low voice. Li Ying and Li Shua nodded in agreement, then closed their eyes and sat cross-legged, and began to absorb the medicinal efficacy seriously. Zhuowen, with his hands behind his back, walked around the medicinal pools and observed the underground palace. He found that the walls around the palace were densely engraved with words. The records were basically the life stories of the palace's owner. Zhuowen looked carefully and learned that the owner of the underground palace was called Jing Hongwen, an alchemist at the middle stage of the 4th heaven of the eternal realm. Jing Hongwen came from the divine spark realm, which ranked first among the super realms. He was the ancestor of a prestigious force in the divine spark realm. In the divine spark realm, Jing Hongwen was the famous pill god. It should be known that in the supreme realms, even in the 9 supreme realms, alchemists at the middle stage of the 4th heaven of the eternal realm could be counted on one's fingers, and there were very few of them. Jing Hongwen deserved to be called the pill god. He was worthy of such a title. There is no record of who killed Jing Hongwen. Zhuowen looked around and did not see the truth of Jing Hongwen's death, which made Zhuowen slightly disappointed. The enemy came too suddenly, catching Jing Hongwen off guard. He did not have time to record what happened to him before he died. Zhuowen arrived at another wall. To his pleasant surprise, what was recorded on this wall was actually a series of pill formulas. There were many pill recipes for the early, middle, and even late stages of the fourth heaven of the eternal realm. There are even pill recipes for the late stages of the fourth heaven of the eternal realm. It seems that Jing Hongwen's level of alchemy is about to reach the late stages of the fourth heaven of the eternal realm. Zhuowen muttered to himself, extracted the pill recipes on the wall one by one, and stored them in a jade slip. After doing all this, Zhuowen's gaze fell on the white jade cauldron floating at the very front. Maybe Jing Hongwen's alchemy inheritance is in this white jade furnace. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed as he muttered to himself. He lifted his foot and walked towards the white jade cauldron. The closer Zhuowen got to the white jade furnace, the more he felt a strong medicinal aura. This medicinal aura was much stronger than that of the 4 medicinal pools in the center of the palace. The white jade cauldron was surrounded by formless runes. However, these runes had no effect on Zhuowen. It was as if these runes knew Zhuowen and made way for him. Finally, Zhuowen came to the front of the white jade furnace, silently looked at the delicate and elegant lines on the surface of the furnace, and whispered, "Your master has promised to leave his inheritance to me." The white jade furnace seemed to have spirituality, trembling slightly, and then emitting a blazing white brilliance. A milky white light shot out and rushed into the depths of Zhuowen's eyebrows. At the same time, a clear picture appeared in the depths of Zhuowen's mind. This picture was the scene of Jing Hongwen fighting with several figures. The cultivation of these figures was not weak. Like Jing Hongwen, they were experts infinitely close to the law phenomenon realm. Jing Hongwen fought bitterly with these figures, his eyes full of shock and anger. The faces of these figures were rather blurry, and Zhuowen could not see clearly, but not far from the battle, there was a figure suspended in the void, and Zhuowen could see it clearly. This figure was dressed in a green robe, holding a long flute in his hand, and was leisurely playing a strange tune. He was very handsome, and his long and narrow phoenix eyes were full of ridicule and sarcasm. This person is called Qing Qixio. He is a mighty figure of the divine flame domain, and he deliberately set up my master to obtain my master's alchemy inheritance. After the picture disappeared, a young and resentful voice sounded in Zhuowen's mind. Chapter 45-28. You're the weapon spirit of the cauldron? Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and asked. Yes. Since my master left his inheritance to you, you have to take responsibility and avenge my master. Zhuowen slowly opened his eyes and found that in front of the white jade cauldron, there was a beautiful woman in white floating within the blazing white light. The woman in white had eyes like peach blossoms and was devastatingly beautiful. She stared at Zhuowen with a trace of expectation and hatred in her eyes. If you promise to avenge my master, I will not only leave my master's inheritance to you, but I will also assist you. I am a cauldron born from heaven and earth, and have a natural talent for refining pills. I can greatly increase the success rate of refining pills. The woman in white stared at Zhuowen with some expectation and some apprehension. What is Qing Qixio's cultivation level? Zhuowen pondered for a moment and asked. He is at the middle stage of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. The woman in white hesitated for a moment and said. Zhuowen nodded. Qing Qixio was indeed not an ordinary cultivator. He was at the middle stage of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. He was probably a famous expert in the divine spark domain. I know that Qing Qixio is very strong, but as long as you have my help, you will be able to step into the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth sooner or later. When your strength surpasses Qing Qixio, you can take revenge. I won't force you to die. The woman in white hurriedly said. Oh? You can help me step into the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth? Zhuowen looked at the woman in white in surprise and asked curiously. He was only at the middle stage of the cosmic embodiment of heaven and earth. He was still far from the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. The weapon spirit of the cauldron said that she could help him enter the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. This boast was a bit too big. The woman in white said, "I am a natural cauldron. I can cultivate by myself and refine divine pills. Moreover, my cultivation can be absorbed by other cultivators and allow them to advance quickly without any side effects." Hearing this, Zhuowen suddenly understood. No wonder the woman in white was so confident. "What is your name?" Zhuowen asked. "My name is Xianya. Master bestowed this name upon me. Did you agree?" Xianya nervously asked Zhuowen. "If I have enough strength in the future, I will avenge your master. I've told your master about this as well." Zhuowen said calmly. "Thank you." The white-clothed woman cried tears of joy and threw herself into Zhuowen's arms. To Zhuowen's surprise, the white-robed woman was clearly just an artifact spirit, but she was gentle and soft like a human cultivator, as if she had a physical body. What surprised Zhuowen even more was that at the moment of contact with the white-clothed woman, a dense energy rapidly flowed from the white-clothed woman into his body. This sort of energy absorption efficiency far exceeded that of a supreme-grade chaos gem. The woman in white noticed Zhuowen's strange behavior and blushed slightly. However, she did not leave Zhuowen's embrace. "Like I said, my cultivation base can be absorbed by other cultivators. As long as you touch me, you will be able to absorb my cultivation and allow your cultivation to rise rapidly," the white-clothed woman said bitterly. Zhuowen gently pushed the white-clothed woman away. Seeing her surprised expression, he said calmly, "Every living being's cultivation is difficult." After saying so, Zhuowen turned around and walked towards the medicine pool in the center of the palace. Xianya stared at Zhuowen's back blankly for a moment before a strange emotion flashed across her beautiful eyes. "What's your name?" Xianya suddenly asked. "Zhuowen." Zhuowen did not turn around and jumped into the medicine pool in the center of the palace. "After I'm done cultivating, you can give me the inheritance. In the future, please guide me in the path of alchemy." Zhuowen sat cross-legged in the medicine pool. He glanced at Xianya and said casually, then began to cultivate the immemorial primordial technique. Xianya silently looked at Zhuowen with a mesmerizing smile on her face. "Master, perhaps you've really chosen the right person this time," Xianya silently said in her heart as her beautiful figure slowly disappeared. Days passed, and in the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. Zhuowen borrowed the rich medicinal power of the medicine pool and smoothly broke through to late-stage cosmic aspect. The medicine pool's medicinal power was still very rich. Zhuowen was confident that with the medicinal power of this medicine pool, his cultivation would be able to break through again and reach the peak of cosmic aspect. 10 days later, Zhuowen opened his eyes again. His aura was soaring like a hurricane, like a dragon or a tiger, his momentum unstoppable. "I've finally broken through to the peak of cosmic aspect." Zhuowen stood up from the medicine pool and used his divine power to evaporate the water on his body. At the same time, the medicine pool Zhuowen was in was completely absorbed, turning into a pool of clear water. Zhuowen looked at the other 3 medicine pools and saw that Duan Jipeng and the other 2 were still cultivating, trying their best to absorb the medicine pool's medicinal power. He couldn't help but sigh at the power of the immemorial primordial technique. Its efficiency in absorbing energy was extremely high. With Duan Jipeng and the other 2's speed, it would probably take another 10 days or so. Now that he had reached the peak of cosmic aspect, he had fully grasped the 9 cosmic aspects in his body, increasing his strength by several times. Zhuowen walked out of the medicine pool, his gaze falling on the floating white jade cauldron at the very front. Perhaps sensing Zhuowen's gaze, the white jade cauldron let out a white glow, which then turned into a beautiful figure. The beautiful figure was none other than Xianya. Xianya, it's time for me to accept your master's inheritance. Zhuowen stared at the beautiful figure in front of him and smiled. Xianya's eyes narrowed as she smiled. Come here. Master's inheritance is inside the cauldron. If you enter the cauldron, you will naturally be able to accept his inheritance. Saying so, Xianya lightly waved her slender hand. The lid of the white jade cauldron behind her slowly opened, letting out white smoke. Zhuowen nodded, not doubting her at all. He took a step forward, turned into a streak of light, and entered the white jade cauldron. Xianya looked at Zhuowen in disbelief and asked, You trust me that much? Zhuowen sat inside the cauldron and casually replied, You have no reason to harm me at all. Why wouldn't I trust you? Xianya was stunned, then a hint of gentleness slowly bloomed from deep within her beautiful eyes. Thank you for your trust. Xianya smiled sweetly, her smile filled with sincerity and gratitude. Clang! The lid of the cauldron finally closed. Zhuowen sat cross-legged inside the cauldron, his gaze sweeping through his surroundings. He noticed that there were complex runes on the walls of the cauldron that seemed to be alive. These runes began to rearranging themselves to form new runes, ever-changing and unpredictable. Only by unraveling these runes will you be qualified to receive all of my inheritance. An old voice resounded from inside the cauldron. Zhuowen smiled, not at all surprised. It seems that Jing Hongwen was still very persistent, even if he was the only candidate. He still wanted to test whether or not he was truly qualified. Don't worry, choosing me is definitely the right choice. Zhuowen laughed faintly. His eyes were focused on the lines on the surrounding walls. His expression revealed that he was deep in thought. Chapter 45-29. Zhuowen sat upright in the center of the furnace, forming seals with both hands, changing unpredictably, only to see the patterns on the furnace's inner wall begin to squirm. Under Zhuowen's influence, they rearranged and reassembled. After repeatedly observing the pattern of the patterns, Zhuowen had long found a way to crack it. As the patterns squirmed faster and faster, the patterns on the inner wall formed a new pattern, like a key, opening the original lock. In the end, all the lines dimmed completely, and the inner walls of the cauldron became dark. After the dimness, it emitted a blazing light. This light manifested a figure in front of Zhuowen. This figure had the appearance of a burly middle-aged man. His eyes were like torches, as if containing the sun. Zhuowen looked straight at this middle-aged man's phantom, his gaze calm. He recognized the identity of the phantom. It was precisely the owner of the inheritance, Jing Hongwen. When he just entered the inheritance land, he saw the middle-aged man sitting on the divine throne in the projection. Fellow Taoist, what's your name? The middle-aged man stared at Zhuowen, asking with a complicated look in his eyes. Zhuowen, I said before, leave your inheritance to me. If I have the ability in the future, I'll help you take revenge. Are you still unwilling now? Zhuowen asked coolly. Jing Hongwen smiled bitterly and said, Fellow Taoist, you're wrong. With your alchemy level and strength, obtaining my inheritance is naturally no problem. The reason why I came out is not to mention the matter of revenge. Zhuowen raised his brows and said, It's because of the furnace's artifact spirit? Jing Hongwen gave Zhuowen a deep look and said, Fellow Taoist, you're very smart. Xuanya is an existence that I cherish the most. I've already fallen for so many years, but she has always been guarding by my side. If you can promise me to take good care of her in the future, I'll pass my inheritance to you without reservation. As for revenge, it's already been so many years. I already don't have extravagant hopes. Qing Qixio is too powerful. You might not be his match. Zhuowen said coolly, Since I promised you, I naturally won't go back on my word. If I really become strong enough, I will definitely kill Qing Qixio. Jing Hongwen was stunned for a moment. Then, he revealed a gentle smile and bowed deeply to Zhuowen. Thank you. I'll leave Xianya to you. After saying that, the essence Hong Wen's shadow burst out with a blazing light. Then, it collapsed into countless light spots and rushed into Zhuowen's glabella. Zhuowen's mind was instantly flooded with knowledge and experience regarding alchemy. These were the knowledge and experience that Jing Hongwen had accumulated over countless years. Zhuowen's alchemy Dao level was only around the late stage of the second heavenly layer of Eternal Realm. But now, after receiving the experience of the essence Hongwen, he immediately had an epiphany. The doubts he had in the past regarding alchemy were all cleared up at this moment. The moment he received the knowledge, Zhuowen's alchemy Dao immediately broke through, reaching the peak of the second heavenly layer of Eternal Realm. Zhuowen believed that if he continued to research, his level of alchemy Dao would break through to the third heavenly layer in a short time. And after he thoroughly digested the essence Hongwen's inheritance, he believed that he could break through to the fourth heavenly layer of Eternal Realm. However, all of this would take a lot of time. Congratulations, you've completely obtained Master's inheritance. A crisp voice came, and then the lid of the furnace opened. Xianye floated in the air, looking at Zhuowen with a smile. Zhuowen nodded and walked out of the furnace. The furnace shrunk to the size of a palm in a blazing light and fell into Zhuowen's palm. You are my new master from now on. Xianye smiled sweetly at Zhuowen, then turned into a stream of light and drilled into the white jade furnace. Zhuowen put away the white jade furnace and immediately looked at the medicine pool in the center of the palace. He found that Duan Jipeng and the other two were still cultivating. Zhuowen spent 10 days cultivating in the medicinal pool, and 3 days accepting the inheritance in the white jade cauldron. Zhuowen estimated that it would take about 10 days for Duan Jipeng and the other two to finish cultivating. He didn't disturb Duan Jipeng and the others. Instead, he sat cross-legged in a corner of the palace and began to consolidate the realm he had just broken through. Through the huge medicinal power of the medicine pool, he broke through 2 minor realms in a row. For him, the progress was relatively fast. He needed to consolidate his foundation, otherwise it would be unstable. While Zhuowen was still cultivating in the inheritance land, in the immemorial Heavenly Dao Academy's encampment. In a luxurious pavilion, the Ice Wraith King and the Ghost Child sat on the main seat. Mi Haomiao, Su Jiang, Xing Hangshu, and the others sat below. Sir Ghost Child. Recently, Zhuowen's group has been staying in the encampment all along. They really can keep their composure. Xing Hangshu frowned and said with some displeasure. During this time, they had sent many spies to monitor Zhuowen's group. They were waiting for them to leave the encampment so that they could take action. However, since 10 days ago, Zhuowen's group had been staying in the inn. Occasionally, Elder Anshi would take Zhuowen's group to other places in the encampment and introduce some of the buildings and features of the encampment. This made the Ghost Child, who had been watching Zhuowen's group, a little depressed. There must be something wrong here. The Ghost Child frowned, vaguely feeling that something was wrong. Sir Ghost Child, is there a problem? Xing Hangshu asked in surprise. The Ghost Child's eyes flickered. He stood up and said, I'll go take a look myself. With that, the Ghost Child left the pavilion, leaving Xing Hangshu, Su Jiang, and the others looking at each other. Let's go take a look too. Although I don't have much contact with Zhuowen, I have some understanding of his character. He is not afraid of anything. He will not be so cowardly because of Sir Ghost Child's threat. Su Jiang said slowly with a gloomy face. Mei Haomiao nodded in agreement. It was not the first time they had dealt with Zhuowen, so they knew some of Zhuowen's character. Hearing this, Xing Hangshu did not object. The 3 of them left quietly and followed the Ghost Child's footstep. After a while, the 4 of them came to the inn where Elder Anshi, Zhuowen, and the others were staying. When their informants saw the Ghost Child and the others coming, they all knelt on the ground and kowtowed, trembling. The Ghost Child waved his hand and sent these informants away. A pair of sharp eyes fell on the entrance of the inn. At this moment, The entrance of the inn was bustling with people coming and going. The ghost child waited patiently. After a while, his eyes narrowed slightly. He saw Elder Anshi and the others coming out of the inn. Elder Anshi walked in front, followed by Zhuowen, Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shuo. Li Yinglong was at the back. Su Jiang and Mei Haomiao frowned. They carefully observed Zhuowen and found that the latter's appearance and aura were exactly the same. Has this guy really become so cowardly? Su Jiang and Mei Haomiao looked at each other and saw the doubt in each other's eyes. Chapter 45-30. The ghost child didn't say a word. He just looked at Zhuowen behind Elder Anshi, and his eyes grew colder and colder. Suddenly, the ghost child stretched out his right hand and flicked his finger. A finger force flew out at an extremely fast speed and rushed toward Zhuowen behind Elder Anshi. Elder Anshi, who was leading the way, sensed the attack and quickly reacted. The finger force was so weak that it was crushed by Elder Anshi. But at that moment, another finger force flew through the air, passed by Elder Anshi, and landed on Zhuowen. Elder Anshi's face changed. He had focused all his attention on the first finger force and ignored the second one. He could only watch as the finger force blasted into Zhuowen's body. Boom! Zhuowen was expressionless. His body turned into a ball of fire and disappeared. Damn it! Elder Anshi's face was gloomy. He looked at the finger force and saw the ghost child and the others in the dark. Ghost child's lips curled into a cold smile. Without even looking at Elder Anshi, he flicked his sleeves and left. Elder Anshi, you tricked us for so long. Before he left, ghost child left behind such a cold sentence. Elder Anshi and Li Yinglong's faces changed as they watched the ghost child and the others leave. We miscalculated. I didn't expect the ghost child to attack in the station, Elder Anshi said with a gloomy face. Li Yinglong frowned and said, Taoist Anshi, the ghost child has violated the station's rules. We can report it to the Central Palace and arrest him for trial. Elder Anshi shook his head and said, Family Headley, the station's rules forbid private fights. The ghost child is very smart. The finger force he used didn't cause any real damage. He was just testing whether Zhuowen was real or not. Hearing this, Li Yinglong's brows furrowed tightly. He thought to himself, this brat is really watertight. What a terrifying fellow. We have to inform Lord Zhuo as soon as possible, Li Yinglong said solemnly. Old man Anshi nodded and waved his sleeve, erasing the shadows of Duan Jipeng and the others. Now that their trick had been seen through by the ghost child, there was no point in continuing to pretend. Li Yinglong took out a communication jade talisman and sent a message to Zhuowen, Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shuo. However, after waiting for some time, Li Yinglong did not receive any reply. What's going on? Why didn't they reply to me? Li Yinglong asked doubtfully. Old man Anshi smiled bitterly. I'm afraid that they are now in a place with a shielding formation, so they can't see our message. Then what should we do? Li Yinglong said anxiously. Li Ying and Li Shuo were the most outstanding members of the younger generation of their Xuemei family. If they were to die here, it would be a huge blow to their family. Old man Anshi frowned and said in a low voice, Now we have to follow the ghost child. Once they find Zhuo Xiaoyu and the others, we can help them. Li Yinglong nodded. He and old man Anshi were both lawful embodiment of heaven and earth cultivators. Although the ghost child was stronger than them, as long as they were far away and avoided direct confrontation, the ghost child would not be able to do anything to them. How cunning! I'm afraid that Zhuowen has already left the base and entered the extraterritorial battlefield, Xing Hangshu said indignantly as he followed the ghost child. Su Jiang and Mei Haomiao's faces were also extremely gloomy. They had been fooled by Zhuowen. The ghost child looked calm and said with a smile, It's okay. As long as we can confirm that Zhuowen has left the base, I have a way to find him. Now, let's go to the extraterritorial battlefield. Su Jiang and Mei Haomiao were puzzled. The extraterritorial battlefield was extremely vast. It was extremely difficult to find someone there. However, the ghost child looked as if he had already won. Xing Hangshu did not doubt him. He had already heard from Sakyamuni that the Ice Ghost King was extraordinary. He knew that the latter would never lie. When the ghost child and the others arrived at the blood-red door, Xing Hangshu frowned and said, "Lord Ghost Child, Old Man Anshi and Li Yinglong are following us." The ghost child did not change his pace and said calmly, "Ignore them." Su Jiang and Mei Haomiao thought for a while and followed the ghost child. When the ghost child left the blood-red door, Li Yinglong and Old Man Anshi also hurried out of the blood-red door. As soon as they walked out of the blood-red door, Old Man Anshi's pupils shrank. An ominous feeling rose in his mind. Without thinking, he took out the heaven and earth furnace and placed it in front of him. As soon as the heaven and earth furnace appeared, it became hundreds of feet large and floated above Old Man Anshi and Li Yinglong's heads. Terrifying flames erupted from the furnace like fire dragons. They looked powerful and terrifying. Boom! In front of the heaven and earth furnace, countless black ice spears shot toward it, but they were all blocked by the flames in the furnace. Old Man Anshi looked ahead gloomily. There, the ghost child floated in the blood-red void. His right hand was in front of him and his left hand was behind his back. Countless black ice spears were floating around him. Su Jiang, Mei Haomiao, and Xing Hangshu followed closely behind the ghost child. They looked at Old Man Anshi and Li Yinglong with hostility. "Anshi, you seem to be very worried." The ghost child looked at the heaven and earth furnace floating above Old Man Anshi and continued, "The heaven and earth furnace? I didn't expect that you would be able to get this divine artifact back. It wasn't easy." Old Man Anshi said coldly, "Ghost child, what do you mean by this? We have no grudge against each other. Why are you attacking me?" The ghost child sneered. "We have no grudge against each other, but it's your fault for following me. Now go back to your base. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude." Old Man Anshi and Li Yinglong's expressions changed slightly. "What if I say no?" Old Man Anshi said coldly. "Then I'll have to ask you to go back." The ghost child stepped lightly in the void with his right foot. The terrifying aura of a late-stage lawful embodiment of heaven and earth burst out. In an instant, the surrounding space seemed to collapse, and countless cracks appeared. The aura of a late-stage lawful embodiment of heaven and earth was so terrifying that it began to affect the void and many of the laws. Boom! Boom! The ghost child stepped forward step by step. His aura became more and more terrifying. Cracks appeared around him. Old Man Anshi and Li Yinglong felt more and more pressure. They did not expect the ghost child to be so strong. "Go!" Old Man Anshi did not hesitate. He drove the heaven and earth cauldron and fled to the west. The ghost child stepped out with his right foot and chased after him relentlessly. "The three of you continue to look for Zhuowen. Once you find him, kill him, no matter what method you use." After the ghost child left, he left behind an indifferent voice. Su Jiang, Mei Haomiao, and Xing Hangshu stayed where they were, deep in thought. "If we go to look for Zhuowen now, it'll be like looking for a needle in a haystack. How about?" Xing Hangshu's eyes revealed a cunning look as he spoke slowly. Su Jiang and Mei Haomiao clapped their hands in joy after hearing Xing Hangshu's plan. They knew that as long as this plan was carried out, Zhuowen would become the prey of most of the experts in the base. Chapter 45-31. 10 days later, Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shuo woke up from the medicinal pool one after another. Their eyes seemed to contain blazing divine light. At the same time, Li Ying and Li Shuo's aura reached the peak, exuding a powerful tribulation aura. "It seems that Li Ying and Li Shuo are about to break through." Zhuowen nodded inwardly. Li Ying and Li Shua's cultivation had reached the peak of the cosmic law phase. Feng, with the help of the medicinal pool, smoothly advanced to the early inverse ancient starlight realm. Duan Jiping jumped out of the medicinal pool and landed beside Zhuowen. At this moment, Duan Jiping's body was exuding a glass-like brilliance, crystal clear and unstoppable. Brother Duan, congratulations on advancing 2 levels in a row. Zhuowen smiled at Duan Jiping. Duan Jiping's harvest was not small. His cultivation was originally at the early inverse ancient starlight realm. Now, after absorbing the medicinal pool, he reached the late inverse ancient starlight realm in one fell swoop. His strength increased extremely quickly. Duan Jiping smiled excitedly and said, "This is all thanks to the miraculous medicinal pool. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to advance so quickly." With that, Duan Jiping's gaze fell on the center of the palace. Li Ying and Li Shua had already walked out of the medicinal pool but did not dare to approach. The 2 of them have also broken through. They're about to undergo tribulation, Duan Jiping said in a deep voice. Zhuowen nodded and said, "We can't intervene in the tribulation. We can only hope that the 2 of them can pass it smoothly." Duan Jiping's eyes were solemn as he nodded in agreement. Li Ying and Li Shua separated from each other. They looked hesitant and were strongly suppressing the aura of the breakthrough in their bodies. "Li Ying, Li Shua, you don't have to suppress your aura. Just break through here. If there's any problem, we'll help." As Zhuowen spoke, he waved his sleeve and numerous runes shot out like swimming fishes. They densely covered the sky and covered the entire surface of the palace. Zhuowen's current level of array Dao had barely reached the early 4th heavenly layer. The array runes he casually arranged were indeed enough to block the impact of ordinary inverse ancient starlight realm tribulation. Li Ying and Li Shua felt the power of the array runes around them and felt a little relieved. They no longer suppressed their auras and began to transcend their tribulations. One terrifying black hole after another appeared around the palace, and from each black hole came one terrifying calamity after another. Although these calamities were terrifying, they didn't affect the array patterns at all. It was like an egg hitting a wall. Zhuowen silently stood at the edge of the palace with his hands behind his back. He watched Li Ying and Li Shua struggle against the disaster. Once the 2 of them were in danger, Zhuowen would use the array patterns to help them get through the crisis. Li Ying and Li Shua's calamity lasted for 3 days and 3 nights before they finally passed. Plop! When the calamity finally disappeared, the 2 of them fart. Sitting on the ground, he was in an extremely sorry state. Zhuowen and Duan Jiping walked to the 2 of them. Zhuowen took out healing divine pellets from his storage divine artifact and handed them to the 2 of them. "Thank you for your help, young Master Zhuo." Li Ying and Li Shua took the healing divine pellets and thanked Zhuowen profusely. They knew very well that if it weren't for Zhuowen's help, they would have died in the calamity. "It's just a small matter," Zhuowen said indifferently. Li Ying and Li Shua looked at each other and smiled bitterly. The reverse ancient starlight calamity that was so important to them was just a small matter to Zhuowen. "We should get out of here." After Li Ying and Li Shua had finished repairing themselves, Zhuowen said calmly, "Brother Zhuo, do you know where the exit is?" Duan Jiping asked in surprise. This palace was completely sealed off. Duan Jiping couldn't think of a way to leave this palace. "Kuya, you tell us." Zhuowen smiled and summoned the white jade cauldron. A beautiful woman in white slowly appeared in front of everyone. Brother Zhuo, who is this woman?" Duan Jiping, Li Ying, and Li Shua looked at the white-clothed woman in front of them in surprise and asked. Zhuowen casually introduced Kuya's origin. Only then did Duan Jiping and the others know that Kuya was an artifact spirit. Zhuowen also obtained the inheritance of the master of this ruin. "Master, follow me. This palace is a hidden place carefully designed by the previous master to prevent Qing Qixio from discovering it. If you want to leave here, You can only leave through a special teleportation array. Koya floated in the air and flew towards the south of the palace. Zhuowen and the others followed closely behind. After a while, the group arrived at the southern border of the palace. Here, there was a huge white jade wall with all kinds of strange beast patterns drawn on it. Koya stopped in front of the white jade wall and gently placed her slender hand in the center of the wall. The strange beast patterns on the wall began to collapse and fused into a ring. In the center of the ring was a complicated teleportation array. This teleportation array is really hidden deep. If I don't obtain the inheritance, does that mean I'll be trapped here forever? Zhuowen asked in surprise. Koya nodded and said, "This is the old master's arrangement. If you don't obtain the inheritance, someone will definitely hold a grudge and expose this place. At that time, the old master's inheritance may be destroyed." Hearing this, Zhuowen nodded in agreement. Jing Hongwen's arrangement was reasonable and he could understand. Koya's slender hand lightly touched the runes. On the surface of the white jade wall, ripples appeared and spread out. Then, the teleportation array released a blazing white light and a powerful suction force came from it. Under Koya's instructions, Zhuowen, Duan Jipeng, and the others did not resist the suction force and were completely sucked into the teleportation array. When Zhuowen opened his eyes again, he found that he was no longer in the palace, but in a huge crater. The sky above his head was filled with the color of blood, as if it had been dyed red with blood. "We're finally out. A month's time is almost up, we have to return to the base as soon as possible," Zhuowen said in a deep voice. Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shua nodded. Elder Anshi's clone could only last for a month, so they had to return within a month. Koya returned to the white jade cauldron and was taken into Zhuowen's great world. Zhuowen took out a divine warship, called Duan Jipeng and the others aboard, and flew towards the base. Not long after the divine warship left, they noticed another divine warship in front of them. This divine warship was heading towards them, with a total of 3 figures on the deck. These 3 figures were a short midget man, a beautiful young woman, and a silent and cold middle-aged man. Zhuowen glanced at the 3 of them indifferently. After discovering that they were human cultivators, he didn't pay them too much attention. In the outer realm battlefield, human cultivators rarely faced each other head-on. Their main opponents were the foreign races. Therefore, when human cultivators met, they would basically just brush past each other without any conflict. However, when the 2 divine warships were about to pass by each other, Zhuowen had a bad premonition. The divine warship on the other side suddenly accelerated and crashed into Zhuowen's divine warship. Rumble! A terrifying explosion suddenly resounded, and the huge divine warship under Zhuowen's feet directly split into pieces. Waves of fire that soared into the sky unscrupulously swept out in all directions. Chapter 45-32. Zhuowen's face was gloomy. The moment the divine warship collapsed, he used his movement technique and left the divine warship. Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shua's reaction speed was not slow either. They followed closely behind and scattered in several other directions. "It seems that you are Zhuowen? You are exactly the same as the image we saw." Suddenly, a gloomy voice came from behind Zhuowen. It was bone-chilling and full of ridicule. Zhuowen's face turned cold. His right hand shot out like lightning and grabbed behind him. Zhuowen held a thin and small arm in her palm, and in the palm of that arm was a dagger that glinted with a cold light. Zhuowen turned his head slightly and saw the midget looking at him with a sneer. "I have no enmity with you. I don't even know you. Why do you want to kill me?" Zhuowen asked with a gloomy look. "The dead have no right to know anything. You'd better accept your death obediently." The midget laughed. His arm suddenly secreted a lot of mucus and slipped out of Zhuowen's palm. The midget man, on the other hand, quickly retreated like a fish, distancing himself from Zhuowen. The moment he left, the midget loosened his palm. The dagger in his palm fell out of his hand and fell in front of Zhuowen. Explode! The midget chuckled and spat out a word softly. Immediately, the dagger that had fallen in front of Zhuowen exploded with extremely astonishing energy and exploded with a bang. Brother Zhuo! Young Master Zhuo! Not far away, Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shuo were shocked. The midget's strength was not weak. He had reached the late stage in verse ancient starlight realm. Moreover, the midget's assassination method was extremely good. Duan Jipeng and the other two did not notice how he got close to Zhuowen. If the midget had launched a sneak attack on the three of them, they would have been seriously injured even if they did not die. So weak. A guy with a bounty of 100 million chaos gems is only this kind of trash? What a disappointment! The midget shook his head. There was a strong disdain in the depths of his eyes. I thought he was at least a late stage in verse ancient starlight realm. So the three of us moved out. I didn't expect him to be just a peak cosmic dharma idol trash. The middle-aged man with a sinister look stepped out of the void and stopped behind the midget. He muttered indifferently. This time we got a great bargain. To think that a guy with a bounty of 100 million is so weak. That 100 million chaos gems was really easy to get. The beautiful young woman giggled. Her eyes sparkled as if they could drip water. However, the words she spoke were filled with mockery. Just as the three of them were feeling complacent and thought that they had gotten a great bargain, a cold voice came from above their heads. A 100 million chaos gems? Could it be that someone is looking for me? The dwarf, the midget, and the midget, the midget, the midget, the midget, and the midget, the midget, the midget. You didn't die? The midget was in disbelief, and could not help but ask. He had used almost all of his strength in that move. Even an inverse ancient starlight realm expert would be seriously injured if not killed. However, the young man in front of him was only at the peak cosmic dharma idol. How could he be unharmed? The midget and the midget were also shocked. They had the same thought as the midget. Speak. Who put a bounty on me? If you tell me, I can be merciful and let you live. Zhuowen looked calm as he looked down at the midget and the other two. His tone had become a little impatient. His strength had long surpassed most inverse ancient starlight realm expert. Even if the three of them joined forces, they were no match for him. If he wanted to kill them, he could do it easily. However, he wanted to find out who was scheming against him in the dark and wanted to eliminate him with 100 million chaos gems. This was really a big deal. Humph! You're lucky to have escaped in advance. After the midget calmed down, he snorted coldly and rushed toward Zhuowen again like a flash of lightning. The moment the midget dashed out, daggers appeared around him, densely covering his entire body. At the same time, the midget's starlight world was completely released. His starlight world was very strange. It was filled with densely packed daggers, or it could be said that his starlight world was completely composed of daggers. Whether it was mountains, rivers, or wastelands, they were all composed of sharp daggers. It looked very strange. Die. The midget was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Zhuowen. He stretched out his right hand and slammed it down. The terrifying starlight divine power crushed down. The densely packed daggers turned into a long dragon and blasted on Zhuowen's body. At this moment, the countless daggers exploded with extremely terrifying explosive energy. Boom! This time, the explosive energy was even more powerful and terrifying. It almost formed a flaming vortex that was close to 1,000 feet wide and tore the surrounding void into thousands of holes. The midget's breathing was rapid. His chest heaved up and down, but his face was blooming with a smug smile. He had even used his starlight world. He did not believe that this kid could survive. However, when the explosion completely subsided, the midget man was dumbfounded. This was because he realized that the figure in front of him, who should have been torn into pieces by the explosion, was unscathed and untouched. I told you, my patience is limited. Zhuowen's body was surrounded by strands of soul sword intent, protecting him from any harm. The impatience in his eyes was growing stronger. Whoosh! Zhuowen turned into a stream of light and turned into shadows in the void. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of the midget. The midget felt extreme danger. Without hesitation, he used his starlight world to block in front of him. Endless starlight spread out like clouds and turned into the world's sturdiest barrier, protecting the midget. Boom! 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 Streaks of purplish gold and black soul sword essences fell like rain and blasted on the midget's starlight world. To the midget's disbelief, the starlight world that he was so proud of was so fragile under the attack of the soul sword essences. It completely collapsed. The midget spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying in a sorry state. Before he could stabilize his body, Zhuowen had already appeared in front of him. Zhuowen's arm was like an iron hoop, tightly choking the midget's neck in his palm. You! The midget looked at the young man in front of him in shock and anger. He was so afraid that he did not dare to move. This was because the young man in front of him did not hide the killing intent in his eyes. He knew very well that if he dared to move, the young man in front of him would definitely kill him. The beautiful young woman and the middle-aged man were petrified. They stared blankly at the scene before them. Chapter 45-33. Don't kill me. I'll talk. I'll talk. The midget man was trembling in fear. His eyes were wide open as he shouted. Zhuowen's eyes were cold and emotionless. I've said that my patience is limited. You've completely exhausted my patience just now. Zhuowen was expressionless as he poured out divine power from his right hand. Instantly, the midget man in his palm screamed in pain. His entire body could not withstand the terrifying divine power and collapse. The moment the midget man's body collapsed, a small person escaped from it and fled into the distance with a terrified expression. This small person was the midget man's divine soul. Zhuowen waved his right hand and the midget man's divine soul was caught in his palm. Sir, please let me go. The midget man's divine soul knelt in Zhuowen's palm and pleaded with tears in his eyes. Zhuowen did not say a word. Instead, he poured out divine power and enveloped the midget man's divine soul. Then, he began to search his soul brutally. Ah! The midget man's divine soul screamed and his face was distorted. The pain of a soul search was not something that ordinary people could endure. There was no pity in Zhuowen's eyes. The midget man had tried to kill him the moment he arrived and had even declared that he would be a dead man. He would not tolerate such a person who wanted to kill him. When Zhuowen let go of the midget man's divine soul, the latter's divine soul became dimmer and dimmer. Finally, it disappeared without a trace. When the beautiful woman and the middle-aged man saw this, they were completely frightened. Run! The two of them were very decisive. They did not even think before they used their movement techniques and fled into the distance. Their strength was almost the same as the midget man's, since the young man in front of them could easily kill the midget man. Naturally, he had the strength to kill them easily. They could not afford to offend such an enemy. Zhuowen had a mocking smile on his face. He took a step forward with his right foot and his entire body turned into a bolt of lightning as he dashed out. Heaven and earth primordial one-line sky. Zhuowen instantly appeared in front of the beautiful woman and slashed out with his sword. Blazing sword light shot out, piercing through the heavens and the earth. It was as if the heavens had been split in half. The beautiful young woman turned pale with fright. She hurriedly summoned a blue longsword and held it in front of her. At the same time, she tried her best to expand her starlight world to form a powerful defensive barrier. The beautiful young woman's starlight world was much more normal. Everything in it was composed of blue water. The entire world was an ocean world. Her starlight world was clearly focused on defense, and its power was not weak at all. However, in the face of the heaven and earth primordial chaos one line, the young woman's starlight world was simply too weak. Since Zhuowen's cultivation had been promoted to the peak of the cosmic Dharma form, his strength had become even more powerful. Naturally, the superpowers he displayed had also increased in power, and their power could not be compared to before. After the terrifying sword light quickly destroyed the beautiful young woman's starlight world, it pierced through her delicate body. The beautiful young woman didn't even have the chance to scream before she died. After killing the beautiful young woman, Zhuowen's hands did not stop moving, and he slashed out again. Sword winds and clouds. With one slash, the winds and clouds rose. The terrifying sword chi storm was like an unprecedented hurricane, sweeping out and enveloping the middle-aged man who was fleeing. When the sword chi storm dissipated, the middle-aged man was only left with a broken body. He fell not far away from Zhuowen, and he was on the verge of death. Zhuowen looked at the middle-aged man in surprise. He didn't expect the latter to survive after taking his superpowers head-on. It seemed that this person's strength should be the strongest among the three of them. Duan Jipeng quietly came to the middle-aged man's side, lifted him up, and came in front of Zhuowen. "Brother Zhuo, since this person is not dead, let's ask him," Duan Jipeng said. Zhuowen shook his head and said, "When I searched the dwarf's soul just now, I already knew the cause and effect. This person has no value." Duan Jipeng nodded and decisively erased the middle-aged man's divine soul. "Brother Zhuo, who put a bounty on you?" Li Ying and Li Shua rushed over, their faces full of doubts. "It's Xing Hangshu, Su Jiaying, and Mi Haomiao," Zhuowen said slowly, but his eyes were terrifyingly cold. The three of them were really persistent. They were willing to pay such a high price to put a bounty on him. It hasn't been a month, right? Xing Hangshu and the others already know that we have left the encampment?" Duan Jipeng asked in surprise. "I'm afraid Senior Anshi and the others have encountered some trouble." Zhuowen's eyes flashed. He knew very well that since Xing Hangshu and Su Jiaying had put a bounty on him so brazenly, they must have confirmed that he had left the encampment. Either Elder Anshi and Li Yinglong had betrayed them and leaked the information, or Elder Anshi and the others had encountered some trouble and finally exposed themselves to the ghost child. Zhuowen was more inclined to the latter. He trusted Elder Anshi and Li Yinglong very much and didn't think that they would betray him. "We have to hurry back to the encampment as soon as possible. However, we have to be careful. Now we have been targeted by many people." Zhuowen reminded them and continued to lead them to the encampment. However, what they didn't know was that their battle had already been seen by some people in the dark. "This kid is very strong. We need as many people as possible to deal with him. Let's go. Spread the news. We need at least a group of experts at the peak of the inverse ancient starlight realm to be Zhuowen's opponent." The people who were watching in the dark sent out messages to inform the experts they were familiar with. In an instant, the news of Zhuowen's location spread to every corner of the extraterritorial battlefield. Many experts gave up their pursuit of the alien tribe and rushed toward the location of Zhuowen and the others. When Zhuowen and the others came to a basin full of potholes, Zhuowen, who was leading the way, stopped. "Brother Zhuo, what's wrong?" Duan Jipeng asked curiously. Zhuowen took a deep breath and swept his cold gaze across the surrounding highlands. "We are surrounded," Zhuowen said in a deep voice. "What?" Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shua looked around and used their divine senses to observe the surroundings. However, they didn't find anything strange. "Young Master Zhuo, are you mistaken? There is no one here at all," Li Ying said with a smile. Zhuowen said in a low voice, "They are very smart. They have set up a powerful shielding array here, so your divine senses can't see through it." Zhuowen's heart sank. He was too careless. He only cared about rushing back to the encampment and didn't notice that there was a problem here. When he realized the problem, it was already too late. Chapter 45-34. Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shua's faces suddenly became serious. After experiencing so much, they had long been convinced by Zhuowen. They knew that the latter would not joke about this issue. In an instant, the three of them became vigilant, cautiously glancing around. Suddenly, there was a crisp applause around the basin. Very keen perception. We obviously hid perfectly enough, but we were still discovered by you. After the applause, there was an indifferent and playful voice. Zhuowen looked up and saw a bald man with a round face slowly walking out from the north side of the basin. The bald man's aura was as vast as the sea. Step by step, the entire basin seemed to be caught in a terrible pressure. At the same time, a large group of people followed behind the bald man, slowly gathering together. Peak Ancient Star Light Expert. Duan Jipeng and the other two's faces changed slightly. They naturally felt the powerful aura exuding from the bald man. The people following behind the bald man are basically NIGU Starlight rank powerhouses. It seems that you are Zhuowen. You can see the shielding array here at a glance. Obviously, your array Dao level should be good. In the south side of the basin, there was also a crisp and pleasant female voice. A young woman with a graceful figure and revealing clothes also slowly walked out, followed by an old man in a long robe. This old man was surrounded by a formation plate that was emitting all kinds of brilliance. Complex formation runes were swirling around him. Array Dao Master at the early third sky of Eternal Realm? Zhuowen looked deeply at the old man in a long robe beside the young woman. With his eyesight, naturally, he could see the old man's array Dao level at a glance. The young woman's strength was also not weak. Like the bald man, she was also at the peak Ancient Starlight Realm. At the same time, two groups of people came out from the east and west side of the basin. The two people in the lead were also at the peak Ancient Starlight Realm. Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shua's faces became very gloomy. They did not expect that there would be so many people around the basin. Moreover, the strongest four people were actually at the peak of the inverse Ancient Starlight Realm. Such a lineup was really too terrifying. You are Zhuowen, and here I was wondering how powerful you were. I didn't expect him to only be at the pinnacle of the cosmic Dharma plane. He's too weak. On the east side, a young man with a pale face said in a sharp voice. He was like an evil spirit that had returned from hell. His gloomy eyes stared straight at Huowen. This kind of trash actually has a bounty of 100 million? Did water enter the brain of the person who put the bounty? Among the group of people in the west, the leader was a muscular man. His skin exuded a greenish-black color, and he looked like a wild beast instead of a human. He stared viciously at Zhuowen as if he was staring at his prey. It's over. 4 peak anti-ancient starlight experts, 15 late anti-ancient starlight experts, and dozens of early and middle anti-ancient starlight experts. Duan Jipeng's face was pale, and his body couldn't help but tremble. Among the 4, his cultivation base was the most powerful, but he was only at the late ancient starlight realm. Facing such a terrifying lineup, Duan Jipeng was simply a mantis trying to stop a chariot, unable to withstand a single blow. The 3 of you scram? Our target is not you, but Zhuowen. The bald man in the north looked coldly at Duan Jipeng and the other 2, and said with disgust. Duan Jipeng and the other 2 looked at each other. They didn't expect that this group of people didn't intend to attack them. Zhuowen looked on coldly. How could he not understand the sinister intentions of the bald man? He wanted to drive a wedge between them. Duan Jipeng's eyes showed a decisive look, and said in a low voice, Brother Zhua has done us a great favor. We can't give up on him and leave alone. Although Li Ying and Li Shua were pale with fear, they stood firmly on Zhuowen's side. Along the way, Zhuowen had saved them so many times. They owed him a great favor, and they couldn't be ungrateful. You have a lot of backbone, but the price of backbone is your life. The muscular man on the west side sneered and suddenly took a step forward. A terrifying power erupted, and the entire basin cracked open. Huge cracks appeared on the ground. The muscular man was like an arrow that had left the bowstring. He rushed toward Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shuo at an extremely fast speed. Duan Jipeng's face changed slightly. Without thinking, he summoned his starlight world and blocked in front of him. Li Ying and Li Shuo also summoned their starlight worlds and stood beside Duan Jipeng. They joined forces to resist the muscular man's attack. A group of chickens and dogs that can't even withstand a single blow. The muscular man's eyes showed disdain. His huge body erupted with a terrifying power. The moment he appeared in front of Duan Jipeng and the others, he also summoned his starlight world. The muscular man's starlight world was filled with extremely heavy and tall mountains. It was as if the heaviest mountains in the world were gathered there. Rumble! The muscular man's heavy body slammed down. With a loud explosion, the starlight worlds of Duan Jipeng and the other two were blown away. Duan Jipeng and the other two vomited blood and were sent flying backward. They crashed heavily on the edge of the basin. Chickens and dogs are just chickens and dogs after all. The muscular man smiled disdainfully. His fierce eyes fell on Zhuowen, who was not far away. The cultivators around the basin looked at Zhuowen indifferently as if they were watching a joke. They knew very well that with the muscular man's attack, Zhuowen and the other three would definitely die. After the muscular man killed Zhuowen, they would snatch Zhuowen's head to claim the reward. Zhuowen's eyes were calm. He slowly walked to Duan Jipeng and the other two, helped them up, and slowly fed them healing pills. From the beginning to the end, he did not look at the muscular man. It was as if the latter did not exist at all. Are you ignoring me? Seeing that Zhuowen ignored him, the muscular man's face suddenly became gloomy. His scarlet eyes were filled with intense anger. XDW 8-inch you're not qualified. Zhuowen was still slowly healing Duan Jipeng and the others. He did not even turn his head. The surroundings were silent. No one expected Zhuowen to be so arrogant. He did not take the muscular man seriously at all. You're courting death. The muscular man was so angry that he laughed. He quickly rushed over like a small mountain. Brother Zhuo, be careful. Duan Jipeng saw that the muscular man was getting closer and his face finally changed completely. He could not help but warn him. Zhuowen slowly turned around. The aura in his body suddenly surged out like a volcanic eruption. Brother Duan, you guys step back first. After saying that, Zhuowen no longer concealed his aura. He released all the 9 cosmic forms in his body. Roar! 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 Suddenly, the ground was filled with terrifying beastly roars. It was deafening. 9 huge cosmic forms appeared around Zhuowen. Zhuowen was clustered in the center. He was like an emperor, high and mighty, sacred and inviolable. 9 cosmic forms? The muscular man's eyes twitched, revealing a look of horror. Didn't ordinary cosmic Dharma adepts only have 1 cosmic Dharma power? Even those talented geniuses only had 2 or 3 cosmic forms at most. However, the young man in front of him had 9 cosmic forms. Moreover, each of them was 10,000 feet tall. Their aura was terrifying and vast. It was really shocking. Chapter 45-35. Cosmic Laksana is just an ant in the end. So what if you have 9 cosmic Laksana? You will still die without a burial place. The burly man snorted coldly as a terrifying aura erupted from his body. The huge starlight world swept over in an unbridled manner. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The burly man's starlight world was too heavy. As it swept over, the The space exploded and the aura became chaotic. The entire surrounding environment became extremely heavy. Zhuowen stood in place as his cold eyes looked indifferently at the huge starlight world that was quickly approaching him. The 9 Dharma Laksana surrounded him, including the 3-eyed winged dragon, the lion body, the white-haired, red-faced giant ape, and the other Dharma Laksana. They were all ready to attack as they let out a shocking roar. Go! Zhuowen pointed his right hand in the air. The 9 Dharma Laksana roared as they rushed out and attacked the burly man in front of them. Boom! 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 The 9 Dharma Laksana collided with the huge starlight world, and terrifying shockwaves erupted without restraint. The burly man's eyes widened as he looked at the 9 Dharma Laksana in disbelief. They were on par with his starlight world. No wonder you are so arrogant. Your 9 Dharma Laksana are so powerful. After the burly man said these words in a sinister manner, his huge body leaped up and directly swept towards Zhuowen. Your Dharma Laksana is so powerful, but I don't believe that you are so powerful yourself. The burly man sneered as he squeezed the void in his right hand. A huge ghost head divine blade appeared in his hand. Rumble! Suddenly, the burly man slashed out with his palm. The divine blade carried terrifying power as it swept over and slashed toward Zhuowen's head. Blade energy could be seen crisscrossing, wild and domineering. Waves of powerful star god energy spread out, causing the surroundings to be filled with a blazing atmosphere of starlight. Zhuowen was not in a hurry. He held the Taiyu sacred sword in his right hand and slashed out with it. Clang! The blade and sword collided, and countless sparks flew out as if there was an endless rain of fire. It looked bright and mournful. The sword chi and saber chi were like a storm, sweeping out in all directions, causing the surrounding basin to explode into a terrifying abyss. The expressions of the group of people who were originally surrounding the basin changed slightly, and they all retreated one after another. This kid is so strong that he can actually fight evenly with Qiu Yan? The curvaceous young woman looked up at the 2 figures fighting fiercely in the air above the basin, which had already turned into an abyss. The bald man's face darkened. Looks like the person who offered the 100 million bounty isn't a fool. He probably already knew that this Zhuowen isn't simple. Not good. Look, Qiu Yan has been forced back. He's actually at a disadvantage. Suddenly, the pale-faced youth who was also at the peak of the defying ancient star-light stage exclaimed. The bald man and the young woman hurriedly raised their heads. Sure enough, they saw that the burly man was actually fighting and retreating at the same time. He was in an exceptionally sorry state. As for Zhuowen, it was as if he had the help of a god. Every step he took, he unleashed a sword strike. His sword intent was like the heavens, and his aura was like a dragon. Heaven and earth primordial one line. All of a sudden, Zhuowen slashed out with his sword and performed a divine ability. A terrifying sword light slashed out horizontally as if it was splitting heaven and earth. It quickly swept out and slashed toward the burly man. The burly man named Qiu Yan roared loudly. He held the saber in his right hand and performed a divine ability as well. The saber intent turned into a crescent moon that lay horizontally in front of him. It was blazing brightly. Crack! However, what shocked Qiu Yan was that his divine ability was directly crushed. Puff! Qiu Yan suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. He was sent flying backward and fell heavily on the ground. Qiu Yan was actually defeated? The bald man's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at this scene in disbelief. Not only him, but the young woman, the pale-faced youth, and the other onlookers were also dumbfounded. All of you can come together. I've said that one is not enough. Zhuowen hovered in the air and looked down at the bald man, the young woman, and the others as he spoke slowly. His words were like the might of heaven that shook everyone's ears, causing them to be absent-minded for a moment. Damn it! He's too arrogant. Does he really think that we can't do anything to him? The bald man had a fiery temper. Without thinking, he summoned the Starlight World and rushed toward Zhuowen. The young woman, the pale-faced youth, and dozens of other experts of the anti-ancient Starlight World swarmed forward and joined forces to besiege Zhuowen fearlessly. Oh no! There are so many experts of the anti-ancient Starlight World. Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shuo, who had retreated to a certain distance, were shocked when they saw that Zhuowen was surrounded by a group of experts of the anti-ancient Starlight World. The bald man was the first to appear in front of Zhuowen. He held a trident in his hand and terrifying star god power spread out like an ocean. In the void behind the bald man, a huge starry sky world filled with ice and snow appeared. Terrifying cold air spread out and even the surroundings turned into a world of ice. It was bone-chilling. A beautiful red flower appeared in the slender hand of the graceful woman. It was as if it was dyed red with blood. It was bright and demonic. The starlight world that appeared behind her was also filled with all kinds of strange flowers. It was like a world of flowers. The starlight world of the pale-faced youth was filled with all kinds of skeletons and was filled with a strange death energy. It was as if it was a world of death. Behind these three people, the starlight worlds were densely packed like stars. They were arranged in a complete formation and swept over. Zhuowen was in the center of these starlight worlds and became a live target for these terrifying starlight worlds. However, Zhuowen looked calm and didn't show any fear. Just in time. The corners of Zhuowen's mouth curled into a playful smile. He suddenly waved his right hand and array discs appeared around him. After that, numerous complicated formation markings suddenly appeared around him, covering the surroundings like swimming fishes. Within the runes, rolling thunderbolts burst out in a dense manner and quickly spread in all directions. In an instant, the surroundings turned into a sea of thunder. Peerless lightning god array, open! Zhuowen spoke in a cold and indifferent voice. Then, he disappeared from where he stood like a ghost. Boom! Boom! The power of the starlight worlds was all drowned out by the thunder. As soon as he defeated the burly man, Zhuowen expected that this group of people would besiege him. Although his strength was strong enough, in the face of so many reverse ancient starlight world experts, it would still be difficult to resist. Therefore, he had already begun to secretly arrange the peerless lightning god array, using himself as bait to lure everyone into this array. And now, his plan had clearly succeeded. Ah! This is a great array? It's so powerful! How can these thunder be so strong? No. I don't want to die yet. Save me! The instant the unparalleled lightning deity array was activated, terrifying howls rang out one after another from within the array. Most of the early-stage Ni-Gu Starlight Realm experts couldn't withstand the terrifying lightning inside the peerless lightning god array, and their souls were blown away. Only the middle reverse ancient Starlight World experts and above could barely resist the thunder attack. However, as the thunder became more and more powerful, the middle reverse ancient Starlight World experts gradually couldn't resist. Chapter 45-36. This is the peerless thunder god array. The robed old man, who was originally beside the young woman, did not join the siege. Instead, he stood in the distance and watched quietly. The instant he saw the grand array that Zhuowen set up, he recognized the details of this array. The peerless thunder god array was infinitely close to the fourth heavenly layer eternal realm. It could be said that it was a half-step fourth heavenly layer eternal realm array. The long-robed old man didn't expect that Zhuowen still had such a trump card on him. It really surprised him. Elder Lin, why don't you help us break this array? In the peerless thunder god array, the graceful woman shouted at the robed old man with an ugly face. The robed old man smiled bitterly. Miss, I can't break this array. It has exceeded my level of array Dao. Break it for me. If you can't break it, I will make you die miserably," the young woman said with cold eyes. The robed old man trembled all over. Thinking of the young woman's means, he shuddered in his heart. He quickly used the array disc and began to crack the peerless thunder god array seriously. However, the robed old man's array Tao level was only at the early third heavenly layer eternal realm, which was far from the peerless thunder god array. After a while, the robed old man caused the peerless thunder god array to backfire because of his mistake. A terrifying sea of thunder poured down and enveloped the robed old man. The robed old man screamed and was completely submerged by the sea of thunder. In the end, there was no movement at all. Inside the peerless thunder god array, the young woman who was resisting the terrible thunder saw this scene, and her face changed completely. Roar! At this moment, the thunder god's phantoms were completely formed in the array. This time, more than a dozen thunder god phantoms appeared in the array. Each of them was incomparably powerful and imposing. Since Zhuo Wen's array Tao reached the early stage of the fourth heavenly layer of eternal realm, he had made some slight improvements to the peerless thunder god array, making it even more powerful. Now, it had no problem trapping a peak ancient starlight expert. When more than a dozen thunder god phantoms appeared, the casualties in the array suddenly became tragic. The middle ancient starlight realm cultivators were the first to collapse. They couldn't resist the power of the thunder god's phantoms. One of the defying ancient starlight intermediate stage cultivators wanted to resist the thunder god's shadow, but the latter's punch destroyed his body and soul. After seeing the fate of this cultivator, the rest of the defying ancient starlight intermediate stage cultivators did not dare to confront the thunder god's shadow and kept hiding inside the grand array. However, the thunder god's phantom was much faster than them, and it would even work together. Therefore, the NI ancient starlight intermediate stage cultivators were successively killed by the thunder god's shadow. Each of them ended up with their body and soul destroyed. After the middle stage ancient starlight stage cultivators were killed, the thunder god's projection began to target the late stage ancient starlight stage cultivators. XDW8 among this group of cultivators, there were more than a dozen late ancient starlight stage cultivators. They were all in danger and gathered behind the young woman, the pale-faced youth, and the bald man. These three people were currently the strongest among them. They had all reached the peak of the defying ancient starlight realm. Naturally, they would seek their protection. Everyone, I have a secret technique that can increase your strength in a short period of time. However, I need you to give me around 30% of your blood essence. Are you willing to help me? Suddenly, the bald man's face turned gloomy and said to the dozen cultivators behind him. The pale-faced youth and the young woman standing beside the bald man frowned slightly. 30% of their blood essence was enough to make them extremely weak and lose most of their combat power. The rest of the dozen or so people also fell into hesitation. Obviously, they were weighing the pros and cons. We can't hesitate anymore. These phantoms are approaching us soon. If you don't make a decision, we will all die here. You must have seen that this grand array is infinitely close to the fourth heavenly layer of the eternal realm. The bald man shouted in a low voice, his face full of solemnity. The young woman and the pale-faced youth showed a look of interest, especially when they saw the approaching thunder god's shadow. Their minds were shaken. They all knew that if they continued like this, they would be defeated by the thunder god's shadow one by one and would inevitably die in the grand array. Now, the bald man's method was the only way to break through. Good. Brother Mu Tong, I believe in you. The pale-faced youth and the young woman looked at each other and nodded heavily. After the two of them agreed, the rest of the dozen or so people also agreed. Since even the two strongest experts had agreed, the rest of them naturally did not have any objections. There's no time to lose. Let's start now. The bald man did not hesitate at all. He took out a dagger and cut his palm, and a large amount of blood splashed out. The thick blood floated in the air, constantly fusing and recombining into a complex blood-red magic array. Everyone, inject your blood essence into this array. Be quick, there's not much time left. The bald man said anxiously. The pale-faced youth and the young woman did not hesitate. They cut their palms respectively. Blood rushed out like a twisted tap and condensed in the blood-red magic array. The rest of the dozen or so cultivators did the same. A stream of bright blood essence turned into bloodlines and was injected into the magic array above the void. The blood-red magic array became more and more viscous, and its color became more and more vivid. The pale-faced youth and the young woman led by the dozen or so people became pale, and their auras became weak. The bald man's eyes burst out a sharp light. He made a gesture with his right hand, and the blood-red magic array floating in the void turned into a bloodline and rushed into his glabella. In an instant, a blood-red mark appeared between his eyebrows. His aura skyrocketed rapidly, and he directly broke through the shackles of the peak of the inverse ancient starlight and stepped into the level of law embodiment of heaven and earth. Brother Mutong, it's up to you. The pale-faced youth supported the young woman, looked at the bald man, and said hopefully. The bald man grinned and said, "Don't worry." With that, the bald man suddenly grabbed the pale-faced youth's head with his right hand. What are you doing?" The pale-faced youth shouted in horror. 30% of the blood essence is not enough. I need all of it. As long as I advance to the level of law embodiment of heaven and earth in a short time, I will be able to break this magic array and kill Zhuowen. The bald man grinned and poured out his divine power. The pale-faced youth exploded, and countless blood essence turned into a blood mist and was absorbed by the bald man. In an instant, the bald man's aura skyrocketed again. "Mu Tong, you bastard! You didn't want to save us at all." The young woman looked at the bald man with resentment. "You're right. You're a group of burdens. You're really stupid. After being forced into a desperate situation, I encouraged you a little, and you obediently sent your blood essence to me like idiots. Don't blame me for being cruel and merciless. You can only blame yourself for being too stupid." The bald man grinned, grabbed the young woman in his hand, and unceremoniously absorbed the latter's blood essence. Next, the bald man almost went on a killing spree, constantly absorbing the remaining cultivator's blood essence for his own use. The bald man's aura continued to skyrocket, almost reaching the threshold of law embodiment of heaven and earth. With his current strength, he could kill any cultivator at the peak of the inverse ancient starlight in seconds. Chapter 45-37. After the bald man slaughtered more than 10 cultivators, his cold eyes turned and fell on Zhuowen, who was outside the formation. "Zhuowen, the formation you set up can't trap me, and you are even less likely to be my opponent. Just give up and let me capture you." The bald man grinned, his face full of confidence. Now, he had touched the threshold of the law phenomenon, and his strength was more powerful than that of a half-step law phenomenon. He only needed to pass the tribulation of the law phenomenon, and then he could become a real law phenomenon elite. Zhuowen calmly looked at the overconfident bald man in the array and sneered. "Your strength has indeed increased a lot, but you are still not an embodiment of heaven and earth expert. How could someone like you be a match for me? How ridiculous!" Hearing this, the bald man's face changed. Zhuowen's disdain had completely hurt his self-esteem. "In that case, don't blame me for being rude. I will kill you," the bald man said coldly. The muscles all over his body suddenly swelled up, and his aura burst out. In the void behind him, the vast starry sky world had expanded by several times. The temperature within 100 million miles dropped sharply. Strange black ice crystals condensed on the ground, and bone-chilling black snow fell from the sky. Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shuo were trembling, and their faces were pale from the cold. So powerful! Duan Jiping frowned and hid in his starry sky world, resisting the black snow around him. His eyes fell on the bald man in front of him, who was confronting Zhuowen, and he was faintly worried. Lord Zhuowen's peerless thunder god formation is very powerful. I think that even if Mu Tong's strength has increased a lot in a short time, he may not be able to break this formation, Liang said, more confident in Zhuowen. I hope so. Duan Jiping nodded. Boom. Boom. In the peerless thunder god formation, more than 10 huge shadows of the thunder god launched a fierce attack. The lightning within the formation became denser and denser. They condensed together and turned into a sea of lightning liquid. Whoosh! A sea of lightning liquid formed from countless lightning bolts poured down, creating terrifying waves that slammed fiercely towards the bald man. More than a dozen thunder god phantoms followed closely behind, overturning the sea of lightning liquid, controlling this terrifying sea of lightning liquid. Rumble! The lightning liquid poured down like a monstrous wave, drowning the bald man in an instant. Humph! Not long after the sea of lightning drowned the bald man, a cold snort came from the sea of lightning. Boom! All of a sudden, an even more powerful aura exploded out, after which the terrifying lightning liquid was actually frozen by some kind of strange chill solidifying in the air. Clang! In the depths of the solidified thunder liquid, a figure suddenly broke out of the ice. With an extremely fast speed, he instantly appeared in front of the thunder god's shadow at the very front. This shadow was the bald man. The bald man's right hand, the shadow of the thunder god. Naturally, the thunder god's illusory figure was not to be outdone. It waved its huge arm and swept it towards the bald man. Boom! The two instantly collided, and the entire space exploded with a terrifying sound. The loud bangs continued to reverberate in the surroundings. They were deafening and shook one's soul. Rip! The bald man's strength was too terrifying. His fist was like a hot knife cutting through butter. It pushed against the arm of the thunder god's shadow, and smashed it into pieces. It burst into pieces. The thunder god's silhouette exploded into countless drops of thunder liquid, then solidified into black ice crystals and shattered into pieces. The bald man knew very well that the thunder god's shadow in the peerless thunder god formation could be reborn endlessly by relying on the power of thunder in the formation. Therefore, he was very decisive. After dispersing the thunder god's shadow, he used the power of his starlight world to condense it into ice crystals, and then smashed it into powder. Boom! Boom! The bald man's aura was like a rainbow. He was like a ferocious wild beast. He pushed his way forward. Wherever he passed, the thunder god's shadow was no match for him. The thunder god's phantoms were smashed into smithereens one by one. They couldn't be any more dead. When all the thunder god's shadows were destroyed, the bald man stood in the center of the formation. He looked coldly at Zhuowen, who was outside the formation. His eyes were full of provocation. It was as if he was telling Zhuowen that the formation was just SOSO. Zhuowen's expression was calm. He was not in a hurry. He waved his right hand and cast out a formation plate. His hands formed a seal and began to increase the power of the peerless thunder god formation. Humph! I said that the peerless thunder god formation can't trap me. The bald man sneered. His hands suddenly formed a seal, and then he suddenly spread them out in front of him in a strange way. Suddenly, the starlight world behind him swept out a terrifying black snowstorm. In the center of the black snowstorm, a huge ice sword gradually emerged. The ice sword was hundreds of feet long. The surface of the blade emitted a black cold light. It was strange and evil. The bald man grasped the hilt of the ice sword with his right hand and then threw it forward. Whoosh! The ice sword pierced the sky and burst out a huge mushroom cloud. In the blink of an eye, it blasted the edge of the formation. Crack! Crack! The huge peerless divine lightning array let out a series of cracking sounds. Countless cracks covered the entire surface of the array. In the end, the peerless Thunder God formation could not withstand the attack of the ice sword and completely collapsed. The bald man let out an unbridled laugh. He took a step forward and stood on the hilt of his sword. His eyes stared coldly at Zhuowen. In the countless cracks, the ice sword was like a hot knife through butter. It swept across the sky and blasted directly at Zhuowen. "Zhuowen, you're dead," the bald man said indifferently. Zhuowen slowly raised his head. Looking at the ice sword that was getting closer and closer, a sarcastic smile appeared on his face. Emo ran. He waved his right hand in the air, and a strange demonic mist naturally surged out of his body, enveloping his entire body. In an instant, under the state of Emo ran, Zhuowen's aura rose step by step. His eyes exuded a strange scarlet color. Soul sword intent. He tapped his forehead with his right hand and a powerful soul power condensed at his fingertip. His right finger pointed at the void in front of him. Black soul power surged out and condensed into a black sword shadow. The sword shadow grew larger and more terrifying. In an instant it grew from 10 feet to 100 feet. "Demonic flame," Zhuowen said softly. The scarlet in the depths of his eyes suddenly emitted a dazzling red light. A scarlet demonic flame swept out and landed on the black sword shadow. The black sword shadow that was 100 feet long burned with an inextinguishable demonic flame. Its power reached an extremely terrifying level. "Go!" Zhuowen stood in place. His right finger flicked the sword hilt. The sword shadow that was burning with an inextinguishable demonic flame shot out like an arrow. This sword condensed Zhuowen's strongest attack at the moment. The bald man's eyes were still full of contempt. He looked down on Zhuowen and naturally looked down on the latter's attack. Bang bang bang! In the blink of an eye, the sword shadow that was burning with demonic flame collided with the ice sword. Continuous explosive sounds rang out in the void. Wave after wave of air waves swept out in all directions like ripples. The ground exploded, space collapsed, and black holes cracked open. Chapter 45-38. The power of this collision was too terrifying. It had almost reached an earth-shattering level. It was truly shocking. Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shuo were directly blown away by the aftermath of the collision and vomited blood. It could be seen how terrifying the collision between the two was. So powerful! What's the situation of the battle? Duan Jipeng and the other two looked forward in horror, which was the core of the battle. There, two figures stood facing each other in the distance, suspended above the void, like two immortal gods. Zhuowen was surrounded by demonic creatures, his eyes flashing with scarlet light, and his momentum was like a rainbow. On the other hand, although the bald man was still facing each other, his face was getting uglier and paler. Poochie! Suddenly, the bald man spat out a mouthful of blood. He looked up at the sky and let out a shrill scream. In front of his chest, there was a huge crack, and a sword shadow slowly drilled out. The scarlet flame burned quickly and enveloped the bald man in an instant. The bald man kept roaring, constantly urging his strength to resist the demonic flames in the sword shadow. Zhuowen silently looked at the bald man, a look of surprise in his eyes. He knew very well how terrifying the demonic flames in the state of demonic corruption were. If his cultivation was still in the middle stage of the cosmic Dharma phase, perhaps the demonic flames he released might not be able to do anything to the bald man. But his cultivation had improved again, reaching the peak of the cosmic Dharma phase, not far from the reverse ancient starlight. The peak of the cosmic Dharma phase, coupled with the enhancement of demonic corruption and the power of the demonic flames, was enough to kill any reverse ancient starlight expert. But the bald man withstood it. It could be seen that the former had absorbed the blood essence of more than 10 reverse ancient starlight experts, which had brought him a lot of benefits. His strength was not weak. Let me send you on your last journey. Zhuowen glanced indifferently at the bald man, and then his right hand grasped the void. The Taiyu sacred sword was held in his palm. Heaven and earth, a line of heaven. Sword shaking the 9 heavens. Life in the morning, death in the evening. Zhuowen slashed out with the sword in his right hand at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, he had slashed out 3 times, each strike more terrifying than the last. The 3 divine abilities came together, creating a shocking sword chi that blasted on the bald man's body. The bald man was struggling to resist the demonic flames on the sword's shadow. At the same time, he summoned all the power in his body and controlled the starlight world in front of him, hoping to resist Zhuowen's 3 divine abilities. Unfortunately, the bald man was too weak. His starlight world had also become dim, and its power had decreased sharply. The starlight world was only able to resist for a moment before it was repelled by the 3 magical powers. Then, all of them landed on the bald man's body. The bald man let out a blood-curdling scream as his body collapsed into pieces. He no longer had the strength to resist the demonic flames on his body. The demonic flames were like maggots that latched onto the bones. They instantly enveloped the bald man and burned his body, god power, flesh, and bones. In the blink of an eye, the bald man was burned to ashes by the demonic flames. The bald man's god soul wanted to find an opportunity to escape, but it could not escape the wrapping of the demonic flames. In the end, it turned into a puff of green smoke and disappeared. When Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shua saw this scene, they were all shocked. The bald man who had crossed the threshold of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth was defeated by Zhuowen just like that. They had to admit that the latter was really powerful. Everyone in the extraterritorial battlefield, if you want to kill me because of the reward, then feel free to come. I, Zhuowen, will accept any challenge. But correspondingly, you will have to pay the price of killing me. As long as you have the resolve to do so, come and kill me. Zhuowen floated in midair with his hands behind his back. He spoke slowly and his voice resounded through the entire extraterritorial battlefield through his god power. He was very clear that the battle just now had alarmed most of the cultivators in the extraterritorial battlefield. His divine sense had already sensed that many powerful auras had gathered in the dark and were observing this place from afar. His words seemed to be a provocation, but it was actually a warning. He was warning those greedy cultivators that they could come and kill Zhuowen, but they had to understand that he, Zhuowen, was not that easy to kill. The bald man's group was the best outcome. Many experts hiding in the dark looked at the figure in the void in the distance with fear in their eyes. At this moment they did not act rashly. The battle just now had also shocked them. In the extraterritorial battlefield, there were not many experts at the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Most of them were below the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Moreover, even if they were below the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth, they would not be too interested in the reward of 100 million. This was because all experts at this level were extremely wealthy. They would not be interested in a reward of 100 million. As for those interested experts, it was unlikely that they would be a match for Zhuowen. Also, tell the people who put the reward on me. I, Zhuowen, know who they are. If they want to kill me, they have to come personally. Don't be so cowardly. I'm standing right here. Zhuowen shouted again. After saying this, he landed on the ground, crossed his arms, and waited silently. How courageous! Many experts in the dark nodded their heads. Many of them quietly retreated to pass on the message. Brother Zhua, are you trying to lure Su Jiang, Mi Hao Miao, and the others here? They are all lawful embodiment of heaven and earth experts. They won't be easy to deal with. Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shua hurried forward and advised him anxiously. The best thing to do now was to rush back to the encampment as soon as possible. If he continued to cause trouble in this place, he would most likely be met with a fatal disaster. They believed that Zhuowen was very powerful, but they still felt that there was a gap between him and the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Moreover, Su Jiang, Mi Haomiao, and the others were working together with the Ice School King. The Ice School King was stronger than Su Jiang and Mi Haomiao. You guys go back to the encampment first. Their main target is me, so they definitely won't notice you guys, Zhuowen said to Duan Jipeng and the other two. Brother Zhua, how can we leave you behind? Duan Jipeng flatly refused. Brother Duan, trust me. When have I ever done anything to seek my own death? If you are my friend, then trust me, okay? Zhuowen stared at Duan Jipeng and said solemnly. Duan Jipeng was stunned. Then, he recalled the powerful sacred chariot that Zhuowen had taken out. He was slightly relieved. Then you must be careful. Don't try to be brave. Duan Jipeng cupped his fists at Zhuowen and left quietly with Li Ying and Li Shuo. Zhuowen closed his eyes and waited silently. The reason he was waiting here was naturally intentional. With his current strength, even if he wasn't a match for the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth experts, it wouldn't be easy for them to kill him. Moreover, even if the Ice School King came personally, Zhuowen wasn't afraid. After all, he had the chariot. If he couldn't defeat them, he could just run away. The only reason why he did that was because of Xing Hangshu. That was because the scale of chaos was in short supply for the Aeon-killing god array. As long as he could get the scale of chaos, he would be able to set up the Aeon-killing god array. With the Aeon-killing god array, he would have more confidence in entering the relic. Xing Hangshu, I hope you won't disappoint me. You must follow me, Zhuowen muttered to himself. Chapter 45-39. Within the encampment in a luxurious inn, Su Jiang, Mi Haomiao, and Xing Hangshu sat around a round table, each pouring wine for themselves. This plan is truly ingenious. It hasn't been long and Zhuowen's whereabouts have already been found. Next, Zhuowen will be hunted down by most of the cultivators in the extraterritorial battlefield. Su Jiang laughed heartily, raised his wine cup, and toasted Xing Hangshu. Mi Haomiao followed suit and toasted Xing Hangshu. When Zhuowen was found, they had already received the news. At this moment, they were naturally in a good mood. Originally, Su Jiang and Mi Haomiao had treated Xing Hangshu as a junior. Now, they treated him as an equal. Xing Hangshu's plan was something that even the two of them could not help but admire. Patriarchs, you flatter me. This is just a small trick. I can only embarrass myself in front of the two of you, Xing Hangshu said humbly. Su Jiang and Mi Haomiao nodded in their hearts. Their impression of Xing Hangshu had improved. XDW 8-inch This Zhuowen will be exhausted from running for his life in the pursuit. We just need to wait and reap the benefits. However, there is still no news of Lord Ghostchild. I wonder how he is doing now? Xing Hangshu's eyes flickered as he asked worriedly. Lord Ghostchild is an elite in the late stage of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. It is not difficult for him to deal with Elder Anshi and Li Yinglong alone. I'm afraid that Elder Anshi and Li Yinglong are running away in panic. Mi Haomiao smiled faintly. He was confident in Ice Ghost King and was not worried at all. Su Jiang nodded in agreement. Ice Ghost King was an elite in the late stage of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. He was much stronger than them who were in the early stage of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. My informant sent me a video. Suddenly, Xing Hangshu exclaimed in surprise. He waved his right hand and a video appeared in the air in front of him. In the middle of the video, a figure was suspended. It's Zhuowen. Xing Hangshu's pupils shrank as he said coldly. Su Jiang and Mi Haomiao narrowed their eyes as well. And tell the person who put a bounty on me. I, Zhuowen, know who they are? If they want to kill me, then come over personally. Don't be so cowardly. I'm standing right here. Within the influence, Zhuowen hovered in the void, and his voice was filled with energy as it resounded through the starry sky. After Zhuowen finished speaking, the video stopped abruptly. Is this kid trying to provoke us? Su Jiang's eyes were filled with killing intent as he grinned. I can't wait any longer. Since this kid has delivered himself to my doorstep, it's just what I want. Mei Haomiao laughed sinisterly. Xing Hangshu frowned and said, Patriarchs, don't you find it strange? This Zhuowen clearly knows that our lineup is extraordinary. Why would he take the initiative to challenge us? This was completely illogical. Unless he's doing it for some purpose. Su Jiang said indifferently, no matter what his purpose is, he is nothing but a paper tiger in front of the absolute gap. Xing Hangshu wanted to say something but was interrupted by Mei Haomiao. Nephew Xing, you don't have to be so worried. Patriarch Su and I are both lawful embodiment of heaven and earth expert. So what if Zhuowen is up to something? He can't escape from our grasp in the end. Mei Haomiao stood up and continued, there's no time to lose. Let's go over now and take down Zhuowen in one fell swoop. Su Jiang nodded, stood up, and looked at Xing Hangshu. Nephew Xing, why don't you come with us? Xing Hangshu laughed bitterly. Although he felt that something was wrong, he couldn't figure out what was wrong. Hence, he didn't refuse. In the spacious wilderness of the extraterrestrial battlefield, Zhuowen crossed his arms in front of his chest and stood silently in the ruins of the basin, waiting silently. In the surrounding darkness, many figures began to stir like the wind blowing through the grass. While waiting, more and more experts gathered in the darkness, silently spying on Zhuowen. These spying gazes were filled with greed, fear, and hesitation. In short, up until now, these cultivators in the darkness had not shown any signs of making a move. They weren't fools. Naturally, they knew that Zhuowen must have a stronger trump card if he dared to stand there so openly. Now, no one wanted to be the first to make a move. Suddenly, Zhuowen, who was standing in the middle of the field, opened his eyes abruptly. A pair of sharp eyes slowly lifted up and looked at the sky in the east. Many cultivators in the darkness seemed to have sensed something and looked in the direction of Zhuowen's gaze. In the sky in the east, 3 streaks of light were flying over at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, the 3 streaks of light appeared in the sky above the basin. Only then did the crowd see that they were 3 men. 2 of them were middle-aged men in luxurious robes, while the other was a young man. Everyone's gaze was on the 2 middle-aged men. This was because the auras of the 2 middle-aged men were too powerful. It was so powerful that it made everyone feel suffocated. Heavens! Both of them are lawful embodiment of heaven and earth experts. Such powerful auras. Many of the cultivators in the dark were shocked. No one expected that a reward of 100 million would attract such experts. Moreover, there were 2 of them. Zhuowen looked indifferently at the 3 people floating in the sky. His gaze finally landed on Xing Hangshu as he said, "You're finally here. I didn't wait in vain." Xing Hangshu's eyes narrowed. He felt that Zhuowen's gaze was a little strange. Oh no, could it be that this guy's goal is to lure me here? Suddenly, Xing Hangshu thought of something and a sense of anxiety appeared in his heart. So what if this guy's goal is me? Chapter 45-40. Zhuowen, you killed so many of my clansmen and even my successor. Now, it's time for me to make you pay. Now, it's useless even if you kneel down and beg for mercy. Mei Haomiao looked down at Zhuowen. His voice was bone-chilling and merciless, filled with killing intent. Su Jiang floated nearby and looked down at Zhuowen calmly. His eyes were filled with arrogance. He knew clearly that Zhuowen couldn't escape even if he had wings. Mei Haomiao alone was enough to kill him. Zhuowen looked at Mei Haomiao indifferently. His aura suddenly exploded and he activated the demonic state. Rolling black fog covered his body. Zhuowen, who was in the demonic state, was barely able to resist Mei Haomiao's aura that targeted him. He's much stronger than the bald man. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. It wasn't his first time facing Mei Haomiao and Su Jiaying. However, it was his first time facing them head-on. Now, I declare your death sentence. Mei Haomiao's eyes were filled with a sinister coldness. His right palm suddenly came crashing down like a huge mountain, landing heavily on Zhuowen's head. Above the void, terrifying energy swept out like a gust of wind. Eventually, it condensed into a huge energy palm. The energy palm flew through the air and landed heavily on top of Zhuowen's head. Rumble! The huge energy palm finally landed and drowned Zhuowen's tiny body completely. The ground exploded, forming a huge ravine. The void was torn apart and turned into numerous black holes. An invisible wave of air swept out like a ring-shaped ripple. Everywhere it passed, the laws crumbled and space collapsed. The experts hiding in the dark were forced to retreat. They only stopped after they had retreated a great distance. You can't even withstand a single blow. At the beginning, you stood here arrogantly waiting for us. Now, you can't even withstand a single blow from me. Mei Haomiao clapped his hands lightly and looked down at the trash who was shrouded in dust. With this move of his, a huge abyss appeared in the ruins of the basin below. Upon closer inspection, the shape of the abyss was exactly the same as a palm. XDW8 Mei Haomiao was indeed a lawful embodiment of heaven and earth expert. A casual attack had such terrifying power. It was truly frightening. Indeed, I can't feel his aura. Su Jiaying glanced at Zhuowen and frowned. He felt that Zhuowen was too weak. If this kid was really so weak, why would he be waiting here to die? Xing Hongshu's eyes flickered. He didn't know why, but his heart was beating extremely fast, and a sense of irritation rose in his heart. What's going on? Why did my heart suddenly become so irritable? Xing Hangshu murmured. He felt that something was not quite right. Let's go. Let's go down and search. This kid still has a map fragment on him. With that map fragment, we can auction it off for a sky-high price. Su Jiaying and Mei Haomiao looked at each other. They didn't suspect anything and quickly flew down the abyss. They were both powerful. Even if Zhuowen wasn't dead and was hiding in the abyss to ambush them, they weren't afraid. When Xing Hangshu reacted, Su Jiaying and Mei Haomiao had already entered the abyss. In the blink of an eye, Xing Hangshu was left alone, hovering above the abyss. Xing Hangshu didn't follow them. Instead, he waited silently in the air. Actually, in his bones, he also looked down on Zhuowen. What was Zhuowen? He was just a rogue cultivator. Xing Hangshu was a genius taught by the sage master. How could a rogue cultivator compare to him? Humph. Junior apprentice brother Shirtian kept mentioning this kid before, and I thought this kid was very powerful. I didn't expect that he couldn't even withstand a normal attack from an early-stage lawful embodiment of heaven and earth expert. What a piece of trash. Xing Hongshu's lips curled into a contemptuous smile. Although his talent and strength were far from Sakyamane's, he was still a famous genius in the ancient Heavenly Tao Academy. His cultivation was only at the late-stage lawful embodiment of heaven, but he had fought with an early-stage lawful embodiment of heaven and earth expert. Although he was defeated, he managed to escape with his life. The difference between the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth and the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth could be described as the difference between heaven and earth. Xing Hangshu was able to fight with an early-stage lawful embodiment of heaven and earth expert with his late-stage lawful embodiment of heaven and earth cultivation, but he wasn't killed. This showed how powerful he was. While Xing Hangshu was waiting, he didn't notice that on the wasteland not far below, an invisible water was slowly seeping out of the soil. The invisible water continued to take shape on the desolate land, and eventually took the shape of a human. The human figure gradually solidified. A youth with a cold expression slowly walked out. This youth was Zhuowen. Rumble! Zhuowen stomped the ground with his right foot. His whole body emitted a strange black fog. Within the black fog there were surging scarlet flames. The moment he made his move, he entered the demonic state and displayed the demonic flame. His aura completely erupted. Xing Hongshu's expression changed slightly. He sensed that something was wrong. He abruptly lowered his head to look and saw a black shadow rushing towards him at an extremely fast speed. Zhuowen? He's not dead. Xing Hangshu recognized Zhuowen in the demonic state at a glance. He was startled at first, but soon revealed a cold smile. It's good that you're not dead. Today I'll kill you with my own hands. This way, junior brother Sakyamuni will think highly of me. Xing Hangshu grinned. His aura suddenly erupted and his right hand grasped the void. Suddenly, divine swords emitting golden light rushed out of his body one after another. Chapter 45-41. Zhuowen looked at Xing Hangshu, who was in a slightly sorry state, in astonishment. Xing Hangshu's strength was above the bald man's, yet he was only at a disadvantage after withstanding his full-powered attack. The Sage Master of the archaic Heavenly Tao Academy is really something. A disciple he casually taught has such talent and strength. Zhuowen sighed with emotion. He felt a sense of reverence and curiosity toward the 9 Sage Masters of the archaic Heavenly Tao Academy. He had already learned about Xing Hongshu's background from Elder Anshi. As one of the 9 Sage Masters, Ji Yuanqing's status was extremely high. Over the countless years, he had taken in many disciples, and he was the one with the most disciples among the 9 Sage Masters. Xing Hangshu was said to be Ji Yuanqing's personal disciple, but in reality, he had only received some guidance from Ji Yuanqing. He wasn't a true personal disciple at all. As for Sakyamuni, who was personally taken in by Ji Yuanqing, it was naturally different. However, even a disciple like Xing Hangshu, who was casually taught, had such extraordinary strength. It could be seen that Ji Yuanqing's master was indeed extraordinary. Suddenly, Zhuowen frowned. He sharply sensed that Mi Haomiao and Su Jiaying, who were searching in the abyss, had begun to rush up. It seemed that the two of them had sensed the aftermath of the battle outside and were rapidly rushing over. I should end this quickly. Zhuowen's eyes shone with a chilling light. He took a step forward, and like a shooting star, he plummeted downwards. Rumble! He held the Taiyu sacred sword in his right hand and fiercely slashed horizontally. One after another, divine abilities exploded from the Taiyu sacred sword and blasted toward Xing Hangshu like a waterfall. Heaven and earth primordial silver lining. Sword shakes the 9 heavens. Life in the morning, death in the evening. At this moment, Xing Hangshu struggled to stand up. When he felt the terror of Zhuowen's divine abilities, his face revealed a look of fear. Hold on. As long as I hold on, the 2 patriarchs will arrive soon. At that time, this kid will have no way to escape. Xing Hangshu gripped the divine sword with both hands, gritted his teeth, and brought out his starlight world. Xing Hangshu's starlight world was a world of swords. His starlight world was filled with astonishing sword chi. Divine swords were stabbed into the depths of the starlight world. The sword chi was piercingly cold. Rumble! In the vast sword world, a surging and terrifying sword chi suddenly exploded. It shot forward like a ray of starlight and collided with Zhuowen's 3 skills. The blinding light produced by the collision spread over a few 100 million li. Countless experts, hiding in the dark, subconsciously narrowed their eyes. It seems that Sakyamuni's high regard for you is not without reason. Your strength is indeed not bad, even above mine. He knew very well that it would be very difficult for them to kill Zhuowen. They could only hope that the ghost child would be able to kill Anxi and Li Yinglong. The two of them were Zhuowen's protection. Once they died, he would no longer have any protection when the ruins opened. Moreover, the ruins were sealed. No matter how fast this kid's mount was, as long as they were prepared in advance, they would definitely be able to take him down. After sending the message, Mei Haomiao and Su Jiaying left the place. In the depths of the extraterritorial battlefield, there was a dangerous zone filled with spatial cracks. This zone was filled with spatial cracks. It was an extremely dangerous zone in the extraterritorial battlefield called the Extreme Fissure Abyss. This place was filled with spatial cracks. If someone accidentally entered it, they would immediately be torn to pieces. Even if they were strong enough to withstand the tearing of the spatial cracks, they would still be teleported to an unknown region. It was a dangerous zone that many experts were unwilling to enter. At this moment, a short figure was rapidly shuttling through this area, avoiding the powerful suction force coming from the depths of the spatial cracks. Humph! Anxi, you can't escape. So what if you're hiding here? I can still find you. If you obediently come out and surrender, I might even let you die a quick death. This short figure shuttling through the spatial cracks was the Ice Ghost King of the alternate ghost clan, the Ghost Child. He had chased after Anxi and Li Yinglong, injuring both of them and forcing them to hide in the Extreme Fissure Abyss. The Ghost Child's heart was filled with irritation. With his strength, it would not be too difficult for him to kill Anxi and Li Yinglong. The reason for this was that the heaven and earth furnace that Anxi controlled was not ordinary. If it were not for the furnace, Anxi and Li Yinglong would have died long ago. The Ghost Child's eyes kept darting around, scanning through the black spatial cracks. However, he did not find the two's auras. His brows gradually furrowed, and a sense of impatience rose in his heart. He had wasted too much time. Suddenly, the Ghost Child sensed something and took out the jade communication talisman at his waist. After he finished reading the message in the communication jade token, his expression changed greatly. He said darkly, "Zhuowen, you sure have hidden your strength well. Even Mei Haomiao and Su Jiaying were unable to take you down." The Ghost Child put away the jade communication talisman, and a look of contemplation appeared on his face. Then, he continued to search this area, unwilling to give up. 3 days later, the Ghost Child left the Extreme Fissure Abyss without hesitation. He knew that Anxi and Li Yinglong were somewhere in this dangerous place, but he couldn't find them in a short time. Instead of wasting time here, he might as well go back and discuss with Su Jiaying and Mei Haomiao. Especially with Xing Hongshu's death, he was partly responsible for it. He had to ask Sakyamuni for help. Only Sakyamuni could talk to Ji Yuanxing's teacher. A few days after the Ghost Child left, a dazzling golden flame suddenly surged out of a crack in the depths of the Extreme Fissure Abyss. Inside the golden flame, a cauldron slowly appeared like a blazing sun. The lid of the cauldron opened, and 2 battered figures walked out. "We finally got rid of the Ghost Child. He's too strong." Old man Anxi's face was covered in dust, and he smiled bitterly. "Brother Anxi, we have to return to the base now. The Ghost Child knows that young Master Zhua and the others are not here. They will definitely use all means to find them. When that happens, they will be in danger." Li Yinglong's face was pale and bloodless, and his eyes were filled with deep worry. He was very worried about the safety of Li Ying and Li Shuo. Among Zhuowen's group, Li Ying and Li Shuo were the weakest. If they were in danger, they would be the first to die. Old man Anxi nodded and said seriously, "Of course we have to go back. But we still have to be careful. The Ghost Child might be waiting for us nearby." Li Yinglong's face changed slightly, and then he nodded. At the same time, Zhuowen, who was driving the chariot of chariot, arrived at the base. When he entered the base, he found that Duan Jipeng and the other 2 were there, but Old Man Anshi and Li Yinglong were nowhere to be seen. "Where are Senior Anshi and Family Headley?" Zhuowen looked at Duan Jipeng and the other two and asked. Duan Jipeng smiled bitterly. "We don't know. When the three of us came back, Senior Anshi and Family Headley were already gone." "Did you send them a message?" Zhuowen asked. Li Ying's face was gloomy. "We sent them several times, but there was no reply at all." Chapter 45-43. Hearing this, Zhuowen frowned slightly. He didn't expect that neither Old Man Anshi nor Li Yinglong would reply to his message. Could something have happened? Suddenly, Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He remembered that when Xing Hangshu, Su Jiang, and Mi Haomiao came to look for him, the ghost child was nowhere to be seen. Could it be? Zhuowen's face turned gloomy. He seemed to have thought of something and muttered to himself. He suspected that Elder Anshi and Li Yinglong had gone to the extraterritorial battlefield to look for them and inform them of the danger after their whereabouts were exposed. However, Elder Anshi and Li Yinglong might have been targeted by the ghost child. It was very likely that they were being hunted down or had met with mishap. Otherwise, Elder Anshi and Li Yinglong would have replied to his message. Zhuowen didn't voice his conjecture. Instead, he sat upright in his room, his brows furrowed as he pondered. Although Duan Jipeng and the other two did not know what had happened, they knew that something must have happened to Elder Anshi and Li Yinglong. "The family had replied to my message," suddenly Li Ying exclaimed. His face was filled with surprise. Everyone looked at Li Ying. He glanced at the communication jade token and said, "The family head said that he and Elder Anshi are fine. He asked us not to worry. He also reminded us not to leave the inn before they return." Duan Jipeng, Li Shua, and Zhuowen heaved a sigh of relief. "Since Elder Anshi and Family Headley are fine, I will go into seclusion for a while." Zhuowen stood up and clasped his fists at Duan Jipeng and the other two. Then, he went back to his room. Now that he had obtained the last material for the primordial divine array, he was in a hurry to set up the primordial divine array. As long as he could set up the primordial divine array, his strength would increase. Then, he would not need to fear Su Jiang and Mi Haomiao anymore. After returning to his room, Zhuowen set up a large array around his room to ensure that he would not be disturbed. Then, he began to take out the materials for the primordial divine array from his macro world. In an instant, the materials in his room were piled up into a small mountain. At the same time, Zhuowen took out the lightning origin array diagram and 2 primordial grand mist stones. With these 2 items, he could greatly increase the success rate of setting up the absolute ancient divine formation. Zhuowen waved his sleeve. Array discs appeared one after another and circled around his body. As he pinched the seal, dense formation markings surged out like flowing water, like water ripples that spread out in the surroundings. The formation patterns were like swimming fish, floating in front of Zhuowen, constantly combining to form the embryonic form of a large formation. The aura emitted by the formation became more and more ferocious, filled with a strong murderous intent. The ultimate ancient deity formation was a formation that focused entirely on attacking. It was extremely ferocious and powerful. Even if an expert at the initial stage of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth was trapped within, he would also be injured. Time flew by and 3 days quickly passed. Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shua stayed in the inn until Old Man Anshi and Li Yinglong returned. "Where's Zhuo Xiaoyu?" After Old Man Anshi and Li Yinglong entered the inn, they glanced at the 3 of them and asked. "Brother Zhuo is in seclusion in his room," Duan Jipeng said. Old Man Anshi and Li Yinglong heaved a sigh of relief. On their way back, they had heard rumors of a bounty on Zhuowen. They were very worried about Zhuowen's safety. Now that they saw that Zhuowen was safe and sound, they were naturally relieved. Creak. Suddenly, Zhuowen's door opened, attracting the attention of everyone in the hall. When Zhuowen stepped out of his room, a faint smile appeared on his face. In 3 days, he had successfully set up the absolute ancient deity formation with the help of the lightning origin array diagram and primordial grandmist stones. Although he had not tested the power of the absolute ancient deity formation, the moment the formation was completed, it emitted a terrifying aura that shocked him to his core. When the formation was completed, if he had not stored the absolute ancient deity formation in his macro world, the entire inn and the nearby buildings would have been turned into ruins. As soon as Zhuowen stepped out of his room, he saw Old Man Anshi and Li Yinglong. He was stunned at first, but then he smiled and went up to them. Elder Anshi, family head Li, you are finally back. I thought something had happened to you when you did not reply to my messages, Zhuowen said. Old Man Anshi and Li Yinglong looked at each other and smiled bitterly. This time, the two of us had a narrow escape. Li Yinglong smiled bitterly. However, as soon as he finished speaking, his pale face suddenly froze and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Family head, are you okay? Li Ying and Li Shua hurried forward to support Li Yinglong and asked worriedly. Li Yinglong waved his hand and said, I'm just a little injured. If it were not for Brother Anshi, I would have died. What the hell is going on? Zhuowen's eyes were serious. He had already guessed what had happened, and a cold light flashed in the depths of his eyes. Just now, when he saw Old Man Anshi and Li Yinglong, he knew that they were in a bad state and had suffered extremely serious injuries. Both of them were experts at the early stage of law phenomenon and were considered extraordinary experts in the extraterritorial battlefield. However, they had been seriously injured. Duan Jipeng, Li Ying, and Li Shua also looked at Old Man Anshi and Li Yinglong with puzzled faces. It's the ghost child, Old Man Anshi said in a low voice with an ugly expression. That Zhuowen is really too cunning. He lured us to his place, and he actually took the opportunity to make a move against Xing Hangshu. Mi Haomiao also said, Yes, yes, yes. Family head Su is right. It's all Zhuowen's fault. We didn't expect him to have an ulterior motive. We fell for his trick. Bang. The ghost child slammed the table and snorted, Family heads, you are both lawful embodiment of heaven and earth experts. Zhuowen escaped even when the two of you worked together. I remember that Zhuowen's cultivation is only at the cosmic embodiment of heaven. The ghost child was furious. Xing Hangshu's identity was special. If he died just like that, he wouldn't be able to explain it to Sakyamuni. Mi Haomiao and Su Jiang lowered their heads and didn't say a word. They knew that they were responsible for this. There was no point in trying to shirk the responsibility. After the ghost child calmed down, he said, There are less than 2 months before the ruins open. Keep an eye on Zhuowen. The moment he leaves the base, you must take the opportunity to kill him. Mi Haomiao and Su Jiang heaved a sigh of relief. They knew that the ghost child didn't intend to hold them responsible. Lord Ghost Child, I believe that Zhuowen won't leave the base easily during this period of time. Why don't we wait for the ruins to open and kill him before entering? Mi Haomiao said. The ghost child looked at Mi Haomiao coldly and sneered. The ruins opening this time is different. You want me to give up the opportunity to enter for a mere Zhuowen? Mi Haomiao trembled. He knew that he had said something wrong and quickly lowered his head. If that Zhuowen doesn't come out before the ruins open, then we will kill him after the ruins open. There are too many experts here this time. Some of them are even experts that I have to be careful of, the ghost child said in a low voice. Su Jiang and Mi Haomiao looked at each other and suddenly understood. Even an expert like the ghost child had come. Would the true experts of the other supreme domains allow the treasures of the ruins to be taken away by others? Your Void Yama Realm's Void Yama Court's Void Yama King has also come. The ghost child said indifferently as he looked at the two of them. Su Jiang and Mi Haomiao sucked in a breath of cold air. As expected, their king of hell couldn't hold back anymore. The other supreme domains won't be outdone either. The divine blaze domain will also participate, the ghost child said calmly. Su Jiang and Mi Haomiao immediately felt uneasy. They had thought that the ruins wouldn't be very famous and that there wouldn't be many experts participating. Now, it seemed that they were frogs at the bottom of a well. They glanced at the ghost child and rejoiced in their hearts. If they hadn't cooperated with the ghost child, just the two of them alone wouldn't have been able to get anything out of the ruins. At the same time, they rejoiced in their misfortune. Chapter 45-45. In the archaic Heavenly Tao Academy, the 9 sacred masters were revered and transcended worldly affairs. Every sacred master had their own mystic realm. The mystic realm, that Yuanqing's mystic realm, was called the Epic Mystic Realm. It was a vast world with many living beings and territories. Yuanqing's mystic realm was like a god in the Epic Mystic Realm. He was worshipped by countless living beings in the world. Sakyamuni arrived in front of a huge mountain. He gently reached out with his right hand and pressed it on the mountain. The mountain seemed to be invisible. Sakyamuni's right hand passed through it. Sakyamuni's expression was calm. His eyes flickered with divine light as he said in a majestic voice, "Master, disciple Sakyamuni requests an audience." As soon as he said that, a golden whirlpool suddenly appeared in front of Sakyamuni. "Come in." A calm voice came from the depths of the golden whirlpool. It was like the might of the heavens as it reverberated in the surroundings. Sakyamuni didn't dare to delay and hurriedly entered the golden whirlpool. The scenery in front of Sakyamuni changed rapidly. Finally, he appeared on a floating cloud thousands of miles high in the sky. Countless auspicious clouds floated in the sky. Sakyamuni stood on the auspicious clouds as if he was walking on flat ground. Above the auspicious clouds stood a majestic group of palaces. At the front of the group of palaces, a dazzling golden throne floated. It was extremely huge, tens of thousands of feet tall. This throne looked like a golden lotus. On the throne sat a figure that was tens of thousands of feet tall. This figure was covered in dazzling golden light. His huge body sat on the throne, motionless. He was high and mighty, sitting on the throne above the clouds, looking down on all living beings in the world. He was one of the 9 sacred masters of the archaic Heavenly Tao Academy, Yuanqing's master. Yuanqing's master was a middle-aged man with a chiseled face. His mottled gray hair was tied into a bun and he wore a jade crown. He looked elegant and dignified. Yuanqing's master had a dignified expression. He sat on the throne and looked down at Sakyamuni. "Disciple, what's the matter?" The majesty in Master Yuanqing's eyes gradually dissipated, and a trace of gentleness appeared. Sakyamuni was the disciple he was most proud of. In the future, Sakyamuni might even catch up with him. Master Yuanqing was naturally very satisfied with such a disciple, and his attitude towards Sakyamuni was clearly different from other disciples. Sakyamuni cupped his hands towards Yuanqing and said in a deep voice, "Master, senior brother Xing has fallen." Master Yuanqing's expression did not change. He said calmly, "Xing Hangshu? He was killed because he wasn't skilled enough." Sakyamuni stood in front, motionless. He knew that Master Yuanqing had not finished speaking. "However, Xing Hangshu is still my disciple. Even if you don't respect the monk, you have to respect the Buddha. The person who killed him didn't know what was good for him. Do you know who killed him?" Ji Yuanqing asked. Sakyamuni said calmly, "That person's name is Zhuowen. He came from the same lower realm as me." A trace of fluctuation appeared in Master Yuanqing's calm eyes, and he took a deep look at Sakyamuni. The lower realm you come from is really a place full of outstanding people. It's already very impressive that there's someone like you. There's actually someone who's not weak. Master Yuanxing said with deep meaning. Although Xing Hongshu's talent and strength were very ordinary in Master Yuanxing's eyes, Master Yuanxing had taught him. His strength far surpassed cultivators of the same realm, and he could even kill enemies of a higher realm. Since that Zhuowen could kill Xing Hangshu, he was obviously not simple. This child's talent is indeed not bad, but it's far inferior to mine. Sakyamuni straightened his back, and his entire body emitted a proud and domineering aura. Of course, you're the chosen one. You possess a Tao root bestowed upon you by the heavens that can ceaselessly evolve. So long as you don't die prematurely, you have hope to surpass Master and even break through the restraints of the chaotic starry sky. Master Yuanxing nodded, and then he sighed with emotion as he looked up at the sky. His gaze passed through the secret realm, passed through the chaotic starry sky, and arrived at the enormous star at the very center of the chaotic starry sky. That was the primeval star, the most supreme existence in the chaotic starry sky. Thank you for your praise, Master. Sakyamuni lowered his head and spoke in a rather humble manner. Master Yuanxing lowered his head and looked at Sakyamuni, and then he said calmly, "You came specially to tell me this because you want to look for Zhuowen and take revenge for Xing Hangshu?" Sakyamuni said, "Senior brother Xing is my senior brother after all, and our relationship is deep. I naturally can't sit idly by when he was killed." Master Yuanxing glanced deeply at Sakyamuni and said, "I won't stop you if you want to look for Zhuowen. I just want to remind you not to immerse yourself in the past. Your future is bright, so don't let the past drag you down." Hearing this, Sakyamuni seemed to understand something. He knelt on the ground and kowtowed heavily to Master Yuanxing. "Thank you for your teachings, Master. Sure Tian understands." Master Yuanxing waved his hand and said, "Since you understand, then you may go." Sakyamuni bowed again, then turned into a stream of light and disappeared from the secret realm. After Sakyamuni left, Master Yuanxing was still sitting on the divine throne. His weathered eyes seemed to be able to pass through time. "Do you really understand?" Master Yuanxing's faint voice echoed throughout heaven and earth, and it didn't stop for a long time. Although a powerful being from the Abyss domain had fallen in this ruin, his strength might not be much stronger than some of the kings of the super domains. Zhuowen felt that something was not right for the ruins to attract so many Imperial Court forces. Guan Yihan nodded and said, "The Imperial Court forces of the 9 super domains have all sent people here." Old Man Anshi and Li Yinglong gasped, their eyes full of disbelief. How noble were the imperial courts of the super domains! For the sake of a mere ruin, they had all mobilized their forces. "You may not know, but we have received news that there is a fragment of the domain's origin in the ruins. It is precisely because of the fragment of the domain's origin that the imperial courts of the 9 super domains have all mobilized their forces to participate in this battle for the ruins." Guan Yihan leaned back in his chair, a blazing look appearing in his eyes. "Fragment of the domain's origin?" Zhuowen muttered to himself in puzzlement. Old Man Anshi explained in a low voice, "Zhuo Xiaoyu, you may not know, but the fragment of the domain's origin is." After listening to Old Man Anshi's explanation, Zhuowen also had a preliminary understanding of the fragment of the domain's origin. Within the 100 domains of the outer domain, each domain had a corresponding origin power. The higher the level of the domain, the stronger the origin power. The strength of the origin energy directly affected the development of the respective realm. The stronger the origin energy, the stronger the comprehension and talent of the creatures born in the realm. Moreover, the energy in the realm would be even denser and rarer. The stronger the origin power, the stronger the natural domain. This was a truth recognized by the 100 domains of the outer domain. And the fragment of the domain's origin was a fragment peeled off from the origin in the depths of the domain. This fragment had many benefits. As long as it was integrated into the corresponding domain, it could increase the corresponding origin power and accelerate the development of the domain. Of course, there were also differences in the level of the domain's origin. As long as the level of the domain was higher, the fragment of the domain's origin that was peeled off would be stronger. Guan received news that the fragment of the domain's origin that was born in the ruins came from the Abyss domain, which was ranked first among the invincible domains. This fragment of the domain's origin was brought out by the mighty person who had fallen in the ruins. But for some unknown reason, this mighty person had fallen in the ruins and left the fragment of the domain's origin in the ruins forever. With so many benefits from the fragment of the domain's origin, it was no wonder that the imperial courts of the 9 super domains had mobilized their forces.